This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Welcome to a more civilized podcast. This is the podcast you're looking for. You may not go about your business. Stay here, listen, and then move along.
Welcome, dear listeners, to another episode of a more civilized podcast. Oh, I'm excited for today's episode. I get to go head-to-head with my buddy Ross.
Yep.
As always, I'm Kyler.
I'm Chris.
I'm Ross.
Yep. We're still the same. We haven't changed. I know that depresses some of you. Ross, you got some news for us?
I do. First of all, oh my gosh! We're going to have another Nerf Nugget this week, guys. So,
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
Next Monday, look forward to that.
Chris is surprising us with a secret Nerf Nugget about which Ross and I know nothing.
Dun,
Yep.
dun,
And
dun.
this is what we're going to do on Friday, not Monday.
Oh,
Cool.
well, whatever.
Yeah,
Whatever
it's
it is.
coming. It's coming soon.
Yeah.
It's coming up.
We may surprise you with a surprise time.
Yeah.
True.
So, yeah, there we go.
After that, more public announcements are the ever classy Star Wars scented candles. Guys, did you know that you can now have the sense of Star Wars in your home? Scents include the lightsaber duel, the cantina, Han Solo in carbonite, Millennium Falcon,
Which I assume it tastes or smells like DW-40.
probably
Solo and carbonite. Like, I can't imagine what else it would smell like.
akin to,
It's Han Solo, though. It's got a musky Dito.
and it's akin
No,
to
but he's in carbonite. He's
WD-40.
trapped in it. Yeah.
So,
It could be mid-thawing Han Solo in carbonite, right?
Oh, that would smell like feet.
yes.
Yeah.
The scents.
I'm going to say
continue.
none of these actually sound like good smells.
I know, for real.
Oh, we've only
Well,
just begun. Hold
lightsaber
on.
duel, that, I guess that could smell like ozone or something
Yeah.
fresh.
Yeah.
No,
Sorry,
really.
yeah, what else
just
is
wait. Just wait. There's more.
They get better. Or worse. As the case
Death
may
Star
be.
destroyed.
Ooh,
Next.
so it's like burnt plastic or something?
Yeah.
I
Burnt
guess.
metal, ionized
Yeah.
gases,
Good times.
rotten
Okay.
flesh. Bantha milk, Yoda's cooking pot,
Oh.
Jabba's palace.
Hold on. Yoda's cooking pot, though, smelled good enough that Luke was willing to give it a taste.
Yeah.
And then he makes an icky face.
Yeah, so, well, and he might have just been trying to be polite there. I don't know.
Well, it might
And
be like maple or something like that, where it smells really good and then it tastes terrible. Or not maple. What am I? Vanilla. No, vanilla. That's what it is.
That's
Sorry.
fair. Vanilla on its
Sorry.
own is quite.
Okay.
That's fair. I was like,
It's been a
I
long
like
day.
maple, man.
It's been a long day, listeners.
Save your maple bigotry for some other podcast.
I always thought that his cooking pot was more of, or that whole situation was more of a Luke is reacting to, yep, it's as bad as it smells.
Oh, could be.
That
So,
could be. Sadly, he did not comment, so we will never know for sure.
There's
Unless
also-
Disney really goes out of the way to tell us.
There's also Jabba's palace,
Oh, I bet that is rank.
Oh yeah,
X-wing cockpit.
that doesn't smell
Which
good
could
either.
smell fresh, like that new car smell, or
No.
I've been doing a Death Star trench run.
I was
okay.
gonna say that smells like gym locker.
Yep.
Things only get worse from here.
Oh god.
Next is Ewok,
Oh,
Wookiee,
Wet or dry? Because
roasted or
yeah, for reals.
Rancor,
Oh, that no. There's no redeeming that with roasting
No.
or wet or dryness.
Yeah.
Trash compactor,
Yeah, that's gonna smell real good.
Sarlacc pit,
And they even comment on how bad the trash compactor smells.
What a wonderful
Yeah.
smell you've just.
Yes.
yeah. I'll guarantee you that's what brought the whole thing up to this candle person.
There's got to be a tauntaun innards, isn't there? Okay, you go ahead.
So
Keep
we
going.
have trash compactor, Sarlacc pit, and the crowning glory is the inside of a tauntaun.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that the actual title? Inside of a tauntaun?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Oh man.
So,
That candle only burns lukewarm.
Yep, sure does.
Chris.
Oh, come on.
Oh, it was so good. Oh my heavens.
That joke never really gets old.
Nope.
I didn't laugh at it last time because he offered us extra points for it, so I had to refuse out of principle. But no, I love that joke.
But
so good.
Still.
Oh.
Anyway.
Oh.
I'm not even gonna, gratify those sense with a plug for the website. If you really want them, you can find them.
Yeah. Oh boy. Whew.
So, And Kyler, I'm going to turn the news over to you for the last piece of news.
This
I didn't
one
get a chance to
was
look at
not, I mean, oh boy. So,
It's a mess.
it is a mess. And always, it never fails. Whenever we come to record, I'm always going, geez, it's been a while. Like, there's not been any Star Wars news. And I'll check, like, the night before we record or the morning of, and it never fails. There's always something there. So this one is a little bit sad and just disappointing and head shaky. So Chuck Wendig, who wrote the Aftermath series, some of the comics, has been canned. He's been fired from Marvel in the middle of his comic series. He's not even going to be finishing this
Fourth and fifth
issue
Yeah.
of the Vader thing he's
Clarification.
working.
He's fired from Marvel, but this is Star Wars news because Marvel is doing Star Wars comics.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Which he was writing.
And then, he's also been canceled from this unnamed book that he was going to write. He's no longer working on that, and he got fired for the, as my notes put it, pretty vulgar and offensive tweets made regarding, like, Kavanaugh and all this stuff that happened recently. He kind of went off on a, even for the internet, pretty unusually.
Now, was it specifically on those? Because I just heard general. His post about it was just general in one word. It was for vulgarity or whatever.
Yeah, he had been posting quite a bit about just recent political things that are happening in the United States right now, and he was expressing his dissatisfaction with those things.
That's fair.
But the way he went about doing it, it was, even for the internet, pretty out there. I mean, lots and lots of various curses and personal attacks on different people, and it was pretty over the top. It was pretty. I mean, I read the tweets and I was like, "Wow!" Like, it's one thing to be angry, dude, but like that's
well, and it wasn't just a
far.
one time. It was also, I believe, someone say it was a pattern of behavior that they considered.
Yes.
And one of his things that he talked about was that he has now Chuck Wendig has been, as basically anyone involved with Star Wars at this point, has received a whole lot of harassment from a whole lot of people for his choices and what he chose to write, especially for his choice to put LGBT characters into the Aftermath books.
Right.
And so there is a whole lot of very unfounded, unwarranted harassment going on that he has been on the receiving end of. And you know, he ties a lot of that in that he's reacting to a lot of things when he does.
But the way to handle
things.
that is not to turn around and put the same level of vitriol back out there. Like,
I generally agree, but
it's pretty bad.
You know, having never been through that, I tried to be like, well. And there's also the matter of just like how comfortable do we want to be with people not being able to fight back or, you know, speak back to these people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough situation. I mean, having read the Aftermath trilogy, I think the first book was okay, and they go downhill from there. I wasn't real thrilled with the way he took things, but it's not like I wish ill upon him for it.
No,
you know what I mean? So it's
well, and they all
surprising.
hit bestseller lists. Like he did. So
it's weird, and it was what was most shocking for me is that I could see them saying, "Okay, you're not going to work on this book that we haven't even talked about yet, that you might not have even really gotten started on yet." But to cancel him in the middle of working on an ongoing series like that he's in the middle of an arc on, that was quite surprising for me. So anyway, there's just a piece of Star Wars news. Take it for what you will. But
rough situation. Sorry, Chuck. You know, that's genuine. Like, sorry that happened. One way or the other.
It's
no matter where you
rough.
assign blame. That's rough for him. So.
So there we are.
It's too bad.
Yep. I think we are ready to move on to more lighthearted, if
for now,
not less intense.
This might come to blows.
Mister Chris is sitting in between us so he can separate us and stop.
Yeah,
me.
no, actually, I'm just getting a good angle for my camera so that you can get this recorded and we'll get some visuals if this does come to blows.
So Ross, do you want to tell our good listeners how this episode came to be?
Well, as many great topics come about, a disagreement.
Yeah.
Kyler and I are of divergent opinions on which is worse, episodes 1 or 2. Kyler believes that episode 1 is worse.
The Phantom Menace.
The Phantom Menace. I am of the opinion that episode 2 is worse and pointless.
Attack of the
and
Clones
is completely unnecessary to Star Wars. But
So, yeah, we're going to argue about this for your entertainment and listening pleasure.
And they informed me that I got to perform the role of adjudicator here. That I got to be the judge between the two of them, which I was actually quite serendipitously nice, because I was like, well, actually, as a matter of fact, I bounce back and forth between which one of those is worse. I've had periods of time where I went, oh yeah, it's definitely number one. But then I'd shift back to number two later, thinking about things and go, well, you know. So that is a fence that I am straddling. And so I'm actually in a great position here to call some shots.
yeah, this will be interesting.
Yep.
So, Kyler.
I'll let you take the first salvo.
No. After you, sir.
No?
Make your case.
Okay.
And I'll tell you how you're
episode
wrong.
1 did come first. So.
So I believe that episode 1 is the worst of the two films. And also, listener, I mean, referencing back to, I think, our second episode where we talked about the prequels, we do like the prequel trilogy. We both agree that episode 3 is the best of the original, or of the prequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm. It's the worst.
And Chris is lying to you all.
Yes.
Never.
And so it's, yeah, we just are arguing about that. And I do genuinely like them, but there is, I think, an order of which is worse. So episode 1 is worse because it's the least relevant to the story of the prequels.
Okay.
And then there's, other divergent problems with it that are more problematic in this movie than in episode 2. Like, there's dialogue, there's we'll get into that. But let's start with the plot relevance, I guess. Especially because that's going to win points with Chris.
Not gonna lie, picking apart the writing is going to earn you more points with me. That is.
So, in a world, Ross, where episode 2 does not exist, here's how the story goes. Boy Anakin, little boy Anakin, yippee! Oh, are you an angel? Let's try spinning, right? Wonderful. Big battle, Trade Federation ships blow up. The next thing we see is the middle of a war that we have no introduction for. General Grievous, we don't know who this, Anakin guy is. We kind of know who Obi-Wan is. Maybe they've been trained. Who knows? We don't know. And he has gone from a happy-go-lucky little kid, oh, this is pod racing, to, oh, I'm about to kill a whole bunch of kids my age the last time you saw me. What in the world is going on with that story? How do you make that leap from A to B? That's a pretty wide chasm to cross. Now, in a world where episode 1 doesn't exist, what we start with, the opening scene of episode 2, is this elevator scene between Anakin Skywalker.
Actually, the opening scene is Padme landing on the...
Yeah, Padme, okay, yeah, that's
true. The very briefest of opening scenes in any Star Wars.
Yes, that's true. So, Padme, and we go, okay, so who are you? Because remember, we haven't seen episode 1, it doesn't exist. So we're going, okay, so this is a senator. They clearly address that she's a senator.
In the opening crawl.
Yeah, in the opening crawl, but even Captain Tycho, her security guard, calls her senator, like, oh, you made it, okay, let's get you in. So clearly, we have some important dignitary who somebody clearly hates because they tried to bomb her. The next thing we see is 2 Jedi in an elevator, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin. They establish everything we need to know about their relationship in the elevator. Hey, you're my master, Obi-Wan. Hey, thanks, man. We've been through some tough stuff together, right? Remember how you saved my life a bunch of times, including a nest of Gundarks that once? Yep. Hey, thanks for that. Cool. Boy, you know what I'm worried about, Master? I'm worried about meeting this Senator Padme, because I haven't seen her since I was a little kid. Boy, I hope she remembers me, because I think about her a lot. All right, you're a little creeper, stalker a little bit, but, whatever. That's all we need to know. Then, boom, we're into the movie. They meet Senator Amidala. We've got the assassination attempts. We're setting up. We're into the Clone Wars. And then we go into episode 3, where Anakin in episode 2 has already started his descent into the dark side. Episode 3 comes along. We finish that descent, and then, goodbye Padawans. Or younglings, right? Okay? That is a bridge that's already built that we can cross easily. Everything that we need to know from episode 1 is summed up in that elevator scene. Mm-hmm. We don't actually need to know anything else about Anakin. And then we get more exposition too. when Anakin and Padme have their little conversation, like, oh man, I haven't seen you since you were a little kid on Tatooine. Okay, cool. Great, so he's from Tatooine. We know that now. We know that they met when he was a little kid. Maybe and it also makes their relationship a lot less creepy.
We don't actually see them interact.
Yeah, because even though technically they were only a couple years apart or whatever, Natalie Portman is clearly older than she's supposed to be in episode 1, so visually it just feels a little weird that she's like, hey, little prepubescent kid, what's shaking, you know?
She never came across
that. But it's weird, but it's still in the back of your head with episode 1, which is weird.
It's in the back of our heads because we know where it goes eventually.
Yeah, but that's why episode 1. But that's why episode 1 is worse. Is it puts that image in your head of she's significantly older than him. This is weird. But anyway, right there, plot relevance. I mean, you can cut episode 1 out of the story completely, and you don't really miss anything.
See, that's my argument for episode 2.
Please explain to me how you can cut episode 2 out.
Now, there would need to be some minor tweaks done to episode 3. I will give you that.
You don't get to do that. We're talking which one.
No,
you gotta, one movie gets burned in the dumpster and you don't get to watch it.
Because the framework is already there, you would just want to change things to make sure it's a better story. Just for...
But you don't...
Hush! I was quiet during yours. You will give me the floor.
I will also add that we never established that you can't tweak things in other films. He's
What? No!
No, he's just saying. He's trying to establish that this is not...
This is not a rewrite the prequel episode.
No. Hold on. But the changes, you wouldn't have to change any plot points. You just have to change how characters approach and or address a situation. It would be a minor dialogue tweak here and there. Okay? So, episode 1, we have established where Anakin comes from. We establish how the beginning of a descent to the dark side through loss of his mother, through fear, through being rejected by the Jedi Council. Hold on. Don't talk. Don't even open your mouth. We establish how he gets to know Obi-Wan. We establish the beginning of Senator Palpatine going from a senator to... we can see that he is going to be inserting himself into Anakin's life. We see... I think those are the major plot points off the top of my head that are coming to the forefront. Episode 2 is just a continuation of most of those things. Everything that's in episode 2, honestly, in my opinion, should be relegated to extended universe books. Because in episode 3, we start off, we see the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, them being the best of friends, the best of partners. You can see how the relationship between Anakin and Senator, now Chancellor Palpatine, has flourished. That would be something you might want to mention in an opening crawl, that he went from Senator to now Chancellor. Seeing Jar Jar give him those powers and that whole little thing isn't actually... You don't need that to progress the story, okay? You have the relationship between Anakin and Padme. She comes up, tells him that she's pregnant. There would need to be something to address
the fact that their relationship is secret.
The fact that and that he is doing this against the Jedi Order, which actually we don't even really get that at all as is. There's nothing actually said anywhere that Jedi can't have some sort of romantic relations, except for one piece of dialogue in episode 2. You could have that in episode 3, it'd be fine, right? You have obviously when episode 3 starts, many years have passed, even from episode 2, right?
3 years.
Right. It's still years.
No, I was just saying for the listeners. The Clone Wars is 3 years long.
So, the fact that there's now a galactic war going on, which I believe is talked about in the opening crawl. It talks about General Grievous coming into...
The first war is war. The first word of that is
war.
War is, yeah.
What is it good for?
Jabba.
Absolutely nothing.
Jabba the Hutt.
There is nothing in episode 2 that I can think of that can only be done there.
Really? Like the clones showing up?
They talk about it in episode 3. We have a clone army. Look. The whole thing with Count Dooku and that whole impersonating the one Jedi, what's his name?
Master Sifo Dyas.
Sifo Dyas. That doesn't need to be there. You talk about how, okay, we have these clones. We don't want our peaceful citizens getting into this. Clones.
Okay. To address some of your points. So, you said that the first off, maybe we should go and establish some ground rules, because if we can just hypothetically say, well, they should have made this change and that would have made it better.
I will allow that if you can remove one with minor, very minor tweaks to the remaining 2 films, because yeah, you could drop number 1, but it wouldn't work as well as you're trying to make it sound. Like the characters already have some problems with coming along flat, but it would be approaching Rogue One levels of my problems with that.
Well, then fine. Let me make some tweaks.
But yeah, you can make some tweaks. I'm fine with that.
Make that elevator scene a little bit longer, or some of the dialogue a little bit better when Padme and Anakin are talking about Tatooine to flesh out that backstory. Boom. Episode 1's taken care of now. Everything you need to know. Because what do we really need to know about Episode 1? What's the actual crucial plot relevant information from Episode 1 that we need? Anakin was a slave. Mm-hmm. He left his mom. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much it.
You need to talk about the hard time he had getting trained, a little bit of animosity that begins to...
Hold on. Because that is actually shown. Show, don't tell. It's
shown in Episode 1.
And throughout... No. His training doesn't start in Episode 1.
But that
he
point
is
where
not
he
trained in Episode 1.
Those little seeds...
However, he is trained. He is still in training. He is a Padawan in Episode 2, who constantly, throughout the entire show, shows that he is a problem child, that he has a hard time following orders, that he has a hard time following the Jedi Code. Obi-Wan has to constantly remind him, no, come over here, this is not how we do things, Anakin, come back over here, follow the rules. Remember, this is how we do things as Jedi. All throughout Episode 2. Throughout Episode 1, he's a kid, there's no training going on. If you want to talk about him having a hard time with the rules and having a hard time training, Episode 2 is where you see that, not Episode 1. So all we actually need to know from Episode 1, we don't need to know that he is a cool pod racer, because we see in Episode 2 and in Episode 3 that he's a fantastic pilot already, and they mention it right off the bat that he's a great pilot in Episode 2. As much as I dearly love Qui-Gon Jinn and Liam Neeson, both separately and together, he's not entirely relevant to the overall story of the Clone Wars, the prequels. He's not. The character, because Anakin is not trained by Qui-Gon Jinn. He's trained by Obi-Wan. So Qui-Gon Jinn doesn't need to be there. As much as I love Liam Neeson and his lone redeeming quality in Episode 1, he doesn't actually need to be there for the plot. And you brought up this interesting point, that we need to see Palpatine go from Senator to Chancellor. No, we do not. All that we need to know is that there's a politician seeking power, and he gets power in Episode 3. Whether he starts as a senator is irrelevant. We can start it at Episode 2, where he's already Chancellor, and go, okay, so here's a Chancellor seeking more power than he already has. Cool.
That's my argument for Episode 3. We only see Senator Palpatine right at we see him at 2 points in Episode 1, right? Just that he's helping out Padme.
Which is why he doesn't matter, and you can lose Episode 1 without harming the story in any way.
That's why you can lose Episode 2 without harming that story in any way.
No. Episode 2, we see him start to get his hooks into Anakin a little bit. Much more in Episode 3, of course, but a little bit. And we see him manipulating the rest of the Senate in Episode 2. And obviously, all of these things are amplified in Episode 3 because that's the climax of the story, so, whatever. But in Episode 1, what does Palpatine do in Episode 1? We have in the crawl that the Chancellor has dispatched 2 Jedis, which isn't even Palpatine, actually, because he's just a senator. And we see him going, oh, better help us. I asked for some help, our transmissions are cut off by... And then at the very end going, Anakin, I'm going to watch out for you. And that's it. You can lose that entirely and have him just be the Chancellor who's already in power, who's going, Anakin, I see you are a key path to more power. And he manipulates him all through Episode 2. You can cut... Episode 1 matters not at all. You also brought up that the loss of his mother... how does the loss of his mother show his descent into the dark side? That is what pushes him towards the dark side, the actual death of his mother. Not just the separation from his mother in Episode 1. The death of his mother is what... he's already kind of like tipping that way, but when his mom dies in his arms, that's when he loses it and says, I am giving in to my anger. Goodbye, Tusken Raiders. If you don't have Episode 2, what you have is a boy who is pretty happy-go-lucky. I mean, he's a little bummed out to meet his mom, but hey, he's coming back, right? Everything's still good, Mom. Just hang out for a little bit and I'll come back and get you. It's all good. To, oh, I'm so angsty, I'm going to murder a bunch of children. But if we start with episode 2, what we see from the very beginning of the movie is a guy who has a hard time following the rules, who thinks constantly that his way is the best way. He's essentially a teenager, right? That, well, I know more than Mom and Dad, right? And Obi-Wan, of course, being the dad here, he's defiant throughout the whole movie. Then he loses his mom, and it's pretty easy to see from the first time they mention his mom when he goes back that, like, this is somebody he cares about. It's his mother, so obviously you don't even have to spell out, oh, and by the way, I care about my mom. Like, you don't have to actually have that dialogue. You say, your mom's missing. Okay, he goes out immediately. We see this on screen. Show, don't tell. We see this on screen, that he cares about his mom, goes out, then we see him lose her right there. He, kills the sand people he has a hard time with, and we already are now seeing, okay, this is a guy who's gonna, his problems with authority, with following the rules, it's gonna not end well. And then that goes right into episode 3 where things haven't gone well for 3 years. And Palpatine has got his hooks even deeper in him. I have a hard time seeing how, bye Mom, happy-go-lucky, I'll be back, to, I'm gonna kill all these kids. Like, that, it seems out of character for him to go from a boy, like one of those two, either the boy or Grumpy Goth Anakin in 3, one of those two is out of character for the other.
One thing you're ignoring is that for the first half of episode 3, Anakin is still very much the light side Jedi that he should be, right? The killing the Tusken Raiders, the death of his mother, those things don't actually need to be seen because they have literally zero consequence on his character until episode 3 later.
But they're setting up for episode 3. That's the thing, is if you have happy-go-lucky kid who is pretty, let's be real, I mean, he's pretty innocent as far as, like, spiritually speaking, you know what I mean? Like, he's a pretty innocent, good kid, Anakin is.
Sure.
Boy Anakin. Then if we jump right from there to episode 3, the first bad thing we see him do is decapitate Dooku. Mm-hmm. And then he goes, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to be in the dark side in 40 minutes after committing one mistake.
No, you are forgetting the rest of that scene. His reaction, he is still very conflicted after he does that. Emperor Palpatine has to sit there and reassure him, has to get in his head and be like, no, you're fine. That's what you needed to do.
And it makes
a terrible
less
person.
Sense if that's the first time we see him make a major mistake. It makes more sense that he's still conflicted because he kills the sand people out of rage and feels good about it at the time, but then when he's talking with Padme in episode 2, he's kind of like, oh, yeah, I shouldn't have done that, but boy, I was so pissed. We see that this is a problem that he has, that he is conflicted beforehand, that this is not a one-time offense. And that's why it makes more sense for Palpatine to be like, here, let me help push you over the edge here. But if that's the first time he's ever made a mistake, it seems like that's a pretty willing descent into darkness on Anakin's part in episode 3 if he goes straight from happy-go-lucky kid to, master of the Sith,
Every bit of dialogue you get from Chancellor Palpatine in that beginning is that this is a good thing to do. You should kill him.
Yeah.
Right? He's playing off of... He's playing... No, hold on. Okay, let me finish my point now. He's playing off of Anakin, trying to do his duty, trying to do his part in stopping this war, which this person is the he thinks Count Dooku is the perpetuator of, right? He's also getting orders from literally the highest ranking person in the Republic that he is serving that says to kill this man. So he does it. Okay, he's like, but this is very, very uncomfortable for me because I'm a good person. It's almost as if I've never done anything bad before because this sounds like this should be a good thing, right?
Except that it's a distinct callback to the Tusken Raiders.
Okay, boys, we're starting to repeat ourselves on this one. So
I have other points. He keeps going back to.
Okay,
sorry.
Okay, you go ahead and finish your points on this.
I want to talk about Qui-Gon's importance. Okay. Qui-Gon is extremely important to this plot because he's the one that identifies Anakin. Obi-Wan wasn't going to do that.
So?
Let him finish.
Sorry.
What do you mean, so?
Okay.
If Qui-Gon's not there, then None of this happens. It's Qui-Gon that goes in that gets him freed. It's Qui-Gon making deals to get Watto to give him the slave, the parts for they need.
And if let's go back to the scenario of one of these movies isn't going to exist anymore, that the prequel trilogy is going to be a prequel duology. Okay? If we get rid of episode 1, do we need to know where Anakin came from, or can we just say, hey, he was a youngling raised like anybody else, only this youngling has problems?
Yes, we do, because that's an interesting story. Because
but
we know...
if it doesn't exist, who cares? How does it affect the rest of the story?
And they do talk about how Anakin grew up as a slave.
Sure.
Right? So, slavery is not something you just walk away from. How did he get out? By how about this Jedi, this benevolent Jedi that came through, paved his way to get him out.
How about we go,
and also,
the Jedi Order is a powerful organization that can lift people out of slavery if they
and they find some little backwater kid.
Okay. Keep going, Russ. What else do you have?
My other point was the killing the Tuskens doesn't actually have any ramifications on Anakin whatsoever.
I think it does.
We don't see any. It sounds like he never let the Jedi know. Padme apparently kept his secret, so he was never turned in for that crime. He apparently goes for another 3 years, doesn't think about it again. We have no evidence that he has any sort of dark sideness in him at the beginning of episode 3.
Neither do we have that if episode 1 is the only thing we're going for.
No, yes, you do. Hold on. Okay, those are the points I was going to make. So the separation from his mother, yes, he's happy-go-lucky at the time, right? But that's because he thinks he's going to be able to come back, okay? And free his mom from slavery. Hold on. I see you opening your mouth.
I didn't even see it, I just heard it.
I know. They get to Coruscant, and they start talking about if he should be trained. He gets grilled by the Jedi Council, setting up a certain amount of animosity between him. He thought he was going to come between the Jedi. Now he has this whole group of people that don't sound like they're too keen on having him achieve his goals, right? Letting him be able to go back and save his mom. That's an awful lot of animosity to plant inside of a little child. Okay? Thank you for stopping. Okay? At that point, both Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan say they're going to train him. Qui-Gon first, and then Obi-Wan, of course, after Qui-Gon's death. That sets up also a bonding relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan. That's why they're such good friends. Now we know why they're together throughout this whole war, why they're working together at the beginning of episode 3. There's nothing in episode 2 that progresses any relationships, that puts anyone in any particular situation other than what we thought they were going to go into. There is one of those little modifications would be to how the relationship between Anakin and Padme develops. But again, that is not one of the strongest points of episode 2.
Yeah.
Or episode 1.
Or episode 1.
Or this trilogy.
Yeah. That's a problem all around. No, okay, so counterpoint, episode 1. Boy, don't we need the movie? Where's the movie that establishes how Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon became... What's their relationship? Where is Obi-Wan's origin story? It doesn't matter.
I would watch that movie.
I would watch that movie too.
So there are also lots of books.
I would watch that movie too, but what I'm saying is it doesn't have an impact on the rest of the story. What we see in episode 1 is 2 Jedi show up. Cool, Master and Apprentice. Got it. I am familiar with this relationship. I don't need it explained.
Episode 1 sets up the Trade Federation.
So we
Okay. Deep breaths. Here we go. So
we're not actually mad at each other.
No.
We're just getting into it.
We're just completely incensed at the other person's pig-headedness.
I made Ross cry.
Hardly. I've not yet begun to fight, sir.
So here's
Let
what
the record show Ross is holding back tears.
Here's what you've convinced me of so far. There's a massive amount of redundancy between episode 1 and episode 2.
Correct, which is why one doesn't exist.
If you remove episode 2, the jump from Anakin the slave boy and Anakin the adult is unsatisfactory to a large degree, particularly his and Padme's relationship, as you said. But there are some significant things you lose there, which is primarily, I do agree that the Tusken Raiders are important. I also agree with you, Ross, that it was decidedly underwhelming for what it should have been from what Star Wars has set up. Like, if Luke striking down his father in anger is going to be enough for him to fall to the dark side, and Anakin can slaughter an entire village and tribe or whatever of Tusken Raiders and then go, well, I'm going to go be a Jedi for 3 more years. That's definitely stepping away with for what we've been shown, or has at least been implied about the dark side. And yeah, it should have had more impact than it did. Definitely agree with that.
That could be attributed to bad writing.
Yes, there's a lot of stuff here that can be attributed to bad writing. Oh my gosh.
To back writing.
But it's removing it entirely definitely makes not having any sort of evolution of relationship for Anakin and Padme is not really an option there. You have to progress that relationship from one to the other. Looking at this as a writer, like as I'm listening to this, I'm going, no, like there is a lot that you could remove from this and just jump straight from 1 to 3. But there are still a few things that we need. Now, you're right that we don't need to see where the clone army comes from. That is utterly irrelevant. It's a nice detail to find out, ooh, Palpatine made this in secret. Ooh. But it's not actually important. We're establishing that this is how a war begins, and that war is very important to the Chancellor eventually seizing emergency powers. We can jump and go just like, oh, there's a war on, especially because we've already established conflict with the Trade Federation. You could have that end in war or something and jump from the one to the other, which would be a more drastic change. But like, there's room to work there, but you're still losing important things with the second one if you don't have it. Now, if you drop the first one, you're also losing some important things. Anakin's mother is not established at all until we see her die in the second movie. Like, he speaks of her, but I don't care. Like, that's not showing, that's telling. The fact that any emotional impact that that scene does have, despite any bad writing, is because we've seen them function as an actual family unit. We know how much she means to him. We know how hard it was for him to leave her and how much he wanted to come back. And then episode 2 shows to us that it continues to reinforce that, yeah, it's been hard for him since, and he's constantly worried for her, and that this is one of his weak points. And so if you just drop episode 1, yeah, it still functions, but again, it functions like Rogue One. It's flat.
But it functions.
It technically functions, but still. And then other things that episode 1 gives us that we lose without that. Again, you could work with, but they'd be flatter, is the episode 1 establishes that Anakin was trained because of this prophecy, that there were people against his being trained, that this was not that he's not just your average apprentice. Now, you could work without that, but it does flesh out.
I was going to counter one of Ross's things, the whole Jedi Council grilling him as a little kid at the end of episode 1. What do you think his relationship is with them all throughout episode 2 that we are seeing when he's like made a part of the council, but he's not going to be the
episode 3
that
we see?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. Again, you can take out
we're establishing that his
the
relationship with the Jedi began with suspicion and distrust, and that is not nothing. It's also you could cut out a large portion of this, but everything in 2 and 3 would be flatter without good chunks of what we got in number 1. I also beginning with Palpatine as Chancellor in number 2 could work again, but the Chancellor's a big position. Like, just showing him as the most powerful man in the Republic already falls flatter than showing him as someone who has worked his way into a position of which there are hundreds, if not thousands, in this massive chamber, and then worming his way into that position, and then from there into power. So Palpatine just showing up as Chancellor is flatter than having him start as a senator and then gain some power. Now, of the two of them, you can drop number 1 easier than you can drop number 2. It would be a more complete story than you would have if you drop number 2. Like, dropping number 2 because of the stepping stone for Anakin and Padme's relationship is the main thing. Just going from them being a kid and this young woman to, hey, we're secretly married, is again, you could make that work. It's just a lot flatter, and that relationship is already written flat, but it's going to be even worse without episode 2.
You would trade the developing of the love story for the developing of the Anakin Jedi Council, Anakin Obi-Wan.
I didn't say I'd trade anything.
You just said it would be easier. Hold on.
I said as a writer, to create both of these, if you drop the one, you're going to have to make some adjustments to the ones that remain. Mm-hmm. And of the two, if I were writing them, it would be easier to drop number 1 and just work with 2 or 3 than it would be to drop number 2 and work with 1 and 3. So the amount of adjustments I'd have to make as a writer would be more significant with dropping episode 2 than episode 1.
But
that's all I'm observing.
Dropping
it would be
all
easier
of
to
those character developments from episode 1, all of those initial meetings and initial.
I'm not saying it would be ideal. It wouldn't be great, but it would be easier than number.
I would also say this: you say all of these character developments. Who do we see in episode 3? Who's left from episode 1 that we see in episode 3? Anakin, Obi-Wan, Padme. Chancellor Palpatine, I guess, but he's barely in episode 1 at all. And
he's in episode 1 enough.
He does, but he doesn't really have much of a relationship with Anakin.
But showing him get to that position is important, like I said.
But you also do show him literally say he's going to attach to this person. We will watch your career with great interest.
And with a minor adjustment, couldn't we have him say that at the beginning of episode 2 after he saves
we could, but remember, having them say things is not as good as actually showing us these things.
Right.
And I'm just saying.
But what I'm saying is all he says in episode 1.
That's the question I'm still trying to get out of Chris, is we're seeing all those things happen in episode 1.
Yeah.
Yes, we see the relationship between Anakin and Padme in episode 2, but that's all we're seeing from that.
Because we're also seeing him lose his mother. We're seeing him actually lose his mother. And Kyler's right, that's important. Like, that is... Being pulled away from his mother is, that's sad. But it's not dark side fuel. Actually losing his mother when he was having visions that this was going to happen, watching him start disobeying and go behind Obi-Wan's back in order to go track down his mother where he's not supposed to go, and that's been bothering him. All of that is much more effective than skipping over all of that.
But we don't see any sort of dark sideness from Anakin at the beginning of episode 3.
It's light. And you're right that I agree that if you drop number 2, you could make it work with him beheading Dooku, and you could make a plot work here. Again, all I'm saying is it would be more effort to make that plot work than it would be to make a plot work if we drop number 1. Now, that said, let me propose this to you. Original trilogy, by the metrics you're giving me, we don't need episode 4.
Yeah. And I grew up without episode 4, and it still made pretty good sense to me.
Yeah. So, while you've convinced me that there's a lot of redundancy here, but there are some important story bits in each of these. Now, the disappointing thing is that they made each of them redundant, which on the one hand, episode 1 would be easier to drop, but on the other hand, some of that blame should fall on episode 2 because it came later. They already knew what was in episode 1, so they should have made that less redundant. So there's blame on both sides. But you could drop episode 4 and make 5 and 6 work, but nobody's proposing that we drop episode 4 or that it is somehow inferior because we could do that and still have a functioning story. It does do an excellent job of setting up character and setting and all of these things that are important to an ongoing
But as a
story.
kid who grew up with only 5 and 6 recorded on home VHS tapes that, you recorded off a TV, here's how it was for me. Watching episode 5, I knew right away that Han and Luke are buddies. Because they literally use that very word to describe each other. Han, old buddy, do you read me? Cool, this Luke guy is friends with a guy named Han. And it's pretty clear right off the bat that there's some sexual tension between Han and Leia. And Leia doesn't really like Han. She might be crushing on Luke. Who knows? But these three are clearly some buddies. Chewie, of course, is a tag-along friend to Han. Am I missing anything about their relationships? You know what I mean? I'm not really.
No.
I'm not. R2 and 3PO are more tag-alongs. I'm not really missing anything about their relationship. Clearly, R2 and 3PO are buddies. I've got all the information I need. And I see that same thing in episode 2, that opening elevator scene.
But what I'm saying is that you're presenting this to me as this is one of the reasons that this movie is inferior. But if we can do the same thing with episode 4, is that really a mark against that movie?
I still love it, but I think it's definitely my least favorite of the original trilogy.
I'll grant that.
There's also episode 4 stands alone on its own, right? It is its own self-contained story. They could have stopped the series right there if it went nowhere, and you would have had a whole story. There's no hanging.
Yep. Yeah, that was the plan.
You can't really get away with that with any of the movies in the prequels, though. I don't think there's any that you can.
Episode 1 is actually closest to that.
Is closest to okay.
Yeah. I mean, again, it is the closest to the standalone, but you still get enough of those plot hooks that resolve in episode 3.
Yep. I'm just saying you can't actually remove either of these and have what complete character arcs we do have.
Right.
They do function best as a unit of 3. Now, if you had to drop one, number 1 would be slightly easier. But like I said, that's in some ways an indictment of number 2 for failing to differentiate itself from number 1 sufficiently. So I'm kind of calling this part of wash so far. Is both of these movies have a lot of redundancies. They both bogged down in redundancies instead of giving us enough distinction, but I'm also not feeling enough pointlessness to one or the other of these to say, yeah, that's definitely a mark against that point there.
If both are redundant, which I think your assessment is correct, then which tells these stories better, right? Which one shows the loss of his mother as a driving force towards the dark side better?
That's why I said it would be. That's why I said it would be easier to adjust without number 1.
Which one shows the relationship between Anakin and Padme better? Platonic
number 2
boy
does.
And girl, or romantic adults?
Like I said, but a lot of what 2 is doing better would also be flattened by removing episode 1. So, I'm calling this a wash. That's my official judgment. Is I'm looking at this and I'm going, you both got some valid points. There's a lot of redundancies here, more than I really thought of. But when it comes down to it, even if you can remove one easier, that's partially an indindictment of number 2.
Rule of cool instead of totally analytical. Then to totally change the direction of attack here. Music. Episode. Well, actually, this is actually one where I agree with episode 1 has the better music, though. I
was going to say, really? That's the one you're
you do
die
have
on?
Across the Stars from number 2, which is fantastic. But episode 1, you got Duel of the Fates.
Yeah.
That one has got to go to episode 1. We love... I do anyway, and I think most people do. You love lightsabers, you love big battles. I think episode 2 has more lightsabers. I think the Darth Maul fight is a cooler fight. Yes. It looks cooler. But you also have like Mace Windu. You've got the whole arena fight with a ton of Jedi, which is really cool to see a ton of Jedi on the screen and duking it out. The opening battle of Geonosis, the first battle of Geonosis, because there will be multiples thanks to the Clone Wars, is pretty dang cool. Not just the arena battle, but then when they pull over to the larger battle going on the plains, that is pretty dang cool. I think a cooler battle than the battle of the Naboo plains.
The battle is cooler. Watching it at the time, the battle on Naboo, remember, on the ground with the Gungans, in space, and the lightsaber battle, that was freaking awesome, though.
It is.
At the time. Again,
it is.
That little bit of eye candy...
If you had to pick a conflict by name to describe or encapsulate or summarize the prequels, what would you say it is? Would you say it's the Clone Wars? Is what the prequels is about?
I'd say it was Order 66.
Well, sure. Which comes about because of the Clone Wars. When did the Clone Wars start, Ross? It's not with the battle on Naboo. 10 whole years go by between the Battle of Naboo and the opening battle of the Clone Wars,
sure,
where people don't really care. And as far as setting up who the Trade Federation is, if we're allowing adjustments, go ahead, throw a couple words about the Trade Federation leading the separatist movement into the opening crawl. Or, I don't know, have the fact that we see
You're drifting
them.
Back into arguments for dropping one or the other. No,
so
don't care. That's at this
anyway,
point. So.
we're not dropping one or the other now?
Nope. Now we're back.
Okay.
I mean, if you guys want to debate that some more, if you feel like you want more, but...
I think that, again, the Trade Federation are established enough as generic baddies in episode 2 that you don't necessarily need to see an entirely separate, not connected to the Clone Wars battle in episode 1 without, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, cool.
I would add another thing that you lost if you lose if you drop episode 1 that I like, at least. It's not, again, you could work around it, but is part of what number 1 establishes pretty well is the obfuscating bureaucracy of the Republic, that it is so slow moving and grinding, and how frustrating that is for people, because that is one of the classic problems with republics as opposed to having a strong leader, and is part of setting up the historical arc here that you love so much, Kyler, with moving from this that's why Hitler was able to seize power, is because people were frustrated with their government and its failure to take care of them and its failure to do so many things. And he stepped in and went, okay, sweeping reforms, we're going to make this better. which is one of the things that a strong leader can do, but then of course a strong leader. And so if you don't have episode 1, you're losing some of that arc. Some of it, again, not all of it. But I like getting to see this stodgy, stagnant republic, and before we step into here's the war.
I also do need to go back though about dropping one of them. Okay, 2 words. 3 words, but 2 of them are hyphenated. Jar Jar Binks.
We'll get into Jar Jar in a bit.
Episode 1, we don't have Jar Jar Binks except for a very minor role at the beginning when he's not here.
We can get into Jar Jar in a second. So I want you guys to step back to battles, like action scenes. Let's just go action scenes in general. How do we compare these two?
Okay, action scene. Define action. Like
I'm giving you a broad brush there. Action scenes.
Because I would not personally
moments of visual spectacle that make you go ooh.
Okay, so the pod race then
would qualify.
Okay,
yes.
because I wouldn't count that as an action scene, but it is a visual spectacle.
I would call it an action scene because action is happening even if it's not a battle scene. There's a difference between those.
It is cool. I think the pod race scene is cool, but overlong without it being a battle.
I have never had a problem with the length of the pod race, but I will grant that a lot of people do.
Yeah.
So I will grant it is overlong.
Beyond that, there is a brief duel in the desert between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, but it's like 3 swings and then Qui-Gon jumps on the ship.
Yeah,
it's barely anything.
Honestly, it would be too short. I didn't even think about it when you said action scenes.
It's and then of course there's the final battle, which is like 15 minutes of ground space lightsaber.
Yeah.
Beyond, and I'm going to count the palace stuff as a part of that as well because it's all happening at the same time.
We also get a bit of Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon fighting droids at the beginning.
Oh, at the very beginning, that's true. So, but it's
arguably big fish in the planet core.
Yeah. I didn't even think of that as an action scene.
Yeah, no, it's very mild on the action. It is spectacle though.
Yeah. Episode 2 though.
Big battle at the end. Jedi and ground.
You can even break that down into 2. You've got the first arena battle, the arena battle with the Jedi, and then the proper battle of Geonosis.
You've got like 40 minutes of combat battle action stuff between those 3 segments.
I would be willing to bet they're about technically the same length.
Ooh, I don't know.
Because
I should have looked it up.
Yeah,
that would have been helpful.
A lot of times it surprises you how long those final battles take. I was once watching A New Hope on TV at my grandma's house as they were starting the attack on the Death Star. And I was like, oh, it's just the attack on the Death Star. I mean, this movie's going to be over in 15 minutes.
Also,
an hour later, granted with commercials, but that sequence takes so much longer than what you realize it does.
Yeah. But also, as far as visual spectacle, the clones loading up to the Acclamator cruisers at the end of episode 2, when you got the Imperial March and it pulls back and you see the scope of just
different
how
sort of
many
visual spectacle, but I'll grant
hints of the Imperial March.
Yeah, no, it is
better.
Well, he redid it. It's
no, he didn't redo it. That's my point.
Yeah. Anyway, but that is pretty visually impressive when it pulls back and you see them and they're all marching there in order. And you're just like, holy crap! This is the birth of the Empire. Another point in its favor. Just saying. But let's see what else. There is through the asteroids, Jango Fett versus Obi-Wan.
I'd forgotten
That's a really cool chase scene. Seeing the Slave One actually get to, let it out a little bit. The lasers, the missiles and stuff. Then when that bomb goes off.
You mean when Jango tries to attack Obi-Wan with the power of heavy metal?
Yes, exactly. It's so cool. But you think about the original trilogy. Boba Fett's so cool, and his ship does precisely one thing that's cool. It starts horizontally and then flies vertically.
Yeah,
and that's it. So it's cool in episode 2 to see what the Slave One can actually do when you let it out a little bit, when you let it off its leash. He's got the big quad blasters on the bottom, or the twin double blasters, I guess is technically what it is. He's got the missiles and stuff. He's got the space depth charges, whatever they are, the sonic mines or whatever. Sonic charges.
Sonic screwdrivers.
Sonic screwdrivers, exactly. That's pretty cool to see what Slave One can do. And of course, it looks really pretty because now we have CGI. And then, to see just how agile and stuff the Jedi Starfighters, that's pretty dang cool. it's kind of dumb and doesn't make a lot of sense for the story, but it is cool to look at, is when they're inside the droid factory and chopping things up and getting... I mean, it's totally dumb for the story.
No, that is literally inserted to pad the runtime.
Oh, yeah. No, it's completely superfluous.
That's actually more of a point against this
but as far as looks go, though...
I am still not that impressed with it. But
for story-wise, you're 100% right. It's totally dumb.
R2 has jets. That was cool.
Oh, and he lights all the people on fire and stuff?
That's
episode 3. That's episode 3.
But he has jets, and he does a cool thing you've never done before. That's the only good part of the factory sequence.
There is the factory sequence, which even visually I'm kind of like, this is just weird. But you did not mention Jango and Obi-Wan fighting.
Oh, yeah.
And the chase on Coruscant. When they're chasing
Coruscant
Zan.
is beautiful. Yeah. It's absolutely beautiful to see the Coruscant nightlife.
Yeah. Well, and getting
but that's
that
not
chase
really
scene.
Action, though. That's
just...
Well,
but the chase scene where they're chasing down Zam
is
absolutely, because you've got him hanging and getting shot down, and then Obi-Wan catching him and chasing her down.
Yeah,
that definitely qualifies as an action
the Obi-Wan
scene.
and Jango Fett fight scene is really cool, and especially like in the rain. We'd never seen anything like that before in Star Wars. Not that heavy rain, anyway.
Yeah.
We'd seen like drizzles on Dagobah, but...
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool, too, to see Jango Fett, like, jumping around, and he shoots his rocket, and it's like, oh, yeah, all these things that...
Seeing what Boba Fett should have been.
Boba Fett, yeah. Well, Boba Fett does use, like, the whipcord and stuff, and he's getting ready to shoot his wrist rocket, and then he gets hit by a blind man and falls into a Sarlacc.
Right. his jetpack malfunctions. He doesn't...
Yeah. Well, Han hit it just right, because the Force is with him.
Yeah.
This is not about episode 6.
So... I think if we're looking at just runtime, I think episode 2 has more
definitely
cool
has
stuff.
more action.
Yeah, it definitely
and
has more.
I think the action that is in there is cooler than what is in episode 1, with the exception of Darth Maul's lightsaber scene, which is one of the coolest to look at.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense as far as combat goes, it's beautiful to look at.
It is lovely.
Well, and I would say the lightsaber fight between Dooku and basically anyone Dooku fought in episode 2 is worse.
Yeah.
So
See,
if
that's what I was going to say here, is that, like, you were dismissing the fight between between Qui-Gon and Darth Maul in the desert. Do you know how many times I rewatched that little bit? That is one of the best lightsaber fights.
It's
in
really
the
cool
prequels.
because Maul comes flipping off his motorcycle and stuff. It's pretty cool.
I remember the first time I watched that and just being like, they are so freaking fast. It's short, but that brief little lightsaber fight is better than the entirety of any lightsaber fight in episode 2.
I'm willing to go with that, actually.
Now, that said, like, the lightsaber fights are definitely superior in number 1. And oddly more plentiful, actually, once you really count it down. Like, you've got 3 lightsaber fights with Dooku, but they're all pretty underwhelming and or weird.
But you then have the arena battle where you have tons of Jedi.
Yeah, but that's not a lightsaber versus lightsaber.
Okay,
what I'm saying, a duel.
Okay.
A lightsaber duel.
A duel, got it.
Yeah, and so episode 1 definitely gets the points for the lightsaber duels. Now, that said, and I do like the pod race as far as the spectacle and action goes, but I will grant that it is overly long. And the droid stuff at the beginning of number 1 is not bad, but mostly it was like, whoa, what are they doing? These Jedi are just letting loose, like, in a way we haven't seen before, so that was exciting. In episode 2, basically every other action scene, though, especially stacking Battle of Geonosis against the Battle of Naboo, like, all of the ground stuff, all of the grapple guns to ascend to the next level on that. I don't care about any of that. It's all done.
Oh, and speaking
Anakin
of cool
in
visuals,
space, a little kid Anakin shooting down. That was just
in episode 2 when the AT. What are they? They're like the artillery ships. They're not the ATTEs, but
they shoot the big blue
laser.
They
shoot the big blue laser.
Down the...
When they shoot down the ball, the center of the Lucre Hulk battleships, and it crashes back down, and the huge dust cloud erupts.
Oh yeah,
that is so cool. And then they're fighting in the dust, and you see blasters like illuminating with silhouettes and stuff. That is so cool.
That is. Yeah. So I will grant the lightsaber duels are better in episode 1. But all of the ground battle, fights, and like everything about the Battle of Naboo, both space and ground, is inferior to space and ground fights from number 2. Plus, we get more from number 2.
What space was in number 2?
basically Jango
it's
Fett.
Jango Fett and
okay.
Obi-Wan. There is no actual.
It's smaller.
space
It's
battle.
not a full scale space battle like we get in Episode 3 or Episode 4 or 6. But even so, just Jango versus Obi-Wan, I would stack that as superior to Anakin in his little yellow Naboo ship. Being dumb.
Because that fight, actually, the space fight is a little underwhelming. If you go back and watch it, there's
well, and the main
the
thing for
weakest
those
part of that
me
whole battle:
is
the ground,
that
the palace, the lightsaber, the space. Like,
all of the intensity of that and the Gungans battle is undermined by the fact that our central figures in them are Anakin and Jar Jar.
Yeah.
yes,
And like the palace assault almost sort of works. It's not horrible, but it's nothing to write home about. But most
there
of the
is
stuff,
one really cool moment though in the palace assault when Padme comes in and doesn't even say anything, and she just pulls out her pistol and boom, boom, double
that was
taps
nice.
the droids, and then points her gun at Newt Gunray and is like, "Oh, now it's your turn to sit and listen to what I have to say." Like that was a pretty cool moment.
That was nice. And honestly, it would have been an immediate, just clear cut. Yeah, number 2 wins on action until you mention that factory scene. Oh, that's bad. But we've still got
I fully admit the factory scene, as far as any plot relevance whatsoever, it is completely devoid.
Yeah.
I did think it was cool, at least the first
It's
opening
not just
shots.
plot relevance, though. It's the entire sequence is comical. It is
It's the video game level.
It
really
is. And I'm not arguing that at all. I'm not saying that it is relevant or good. I'm just saying that first, when you look over the factory and you see all the droids getting made, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
That's fair.
And that's what I would.
But it is an action sequence there, but it is not enough to take away, like, to make this a draw. I would say that number 2 does win on action scenes.
I'm okay in admitting that. I can't argue any other way.
Okay.
What about the dumb things in either movie?
Okay, let's go into it.
I haven't completely thought this through, but Episode 1, you have Jar Jar.
You can't count that as one thing, because it's like every dang scene he's in is a whole new, fresh round of stupid hell.
Mm-hmm. In Episode 2, you have slapstick from C-3PO.
Which is...
It is bad.
It is bad.
You have the factory scene, which we've just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there should be more.
You also have young Anakin. Not to go cliche, sorry Jake Lloyd, but he's not great.
If you're gonna go young Anakin, then we're gonna go middle-aged Anakin, or mid
teenage
age-range
Anakin
of "You're so soft."
It's so weird and creepy and gross.
And I hate that.
Guys, just a pro tip for you: if you're trying to get a woman, just do the opposite of Episode 2 Anakin.
I would say
bad.
the stupidness of the Anakins cancel each other out.
I don't know, but the dialogue is really bad in both. But you have things like, "Yippee! Are you an angel?"
But you
it's
also
so
have
bad.
His whining about Obi-Wan holding him back in the temper tantrum. It's just no.
They're both bad. There's no way around it. I think my irritation at Jake Lloyd, or at young Anakin, I should say, not at Jake Lloyd, because this is not a personal attack. I really have no ill feelings towards Jake Lloyd, but young Anakin, I think, is more irritating than young adult Anakin. And that is fully admitting that they're both quite irritating, and that they both say terrible things. I just think one is more than the other.
I have long accepted my disability in finally dissecting the merits of an actor's performance.
Yeah.
I noticed it in Episode 2 from how poorly things were delivered from Hayden Christensen in Episode 2.
And you didn't in Episode 1?
No, from a kid?
Because you were younger?
From a kid? Honestly, those things are a little bit more consistent for a kid.
Ugh.
So it's more what you expect.
Man. I don't know. Well, and this is part of the problem, though, because George Lucas told him to act that way, to be more Wood-like. And so it's just like, dang it, what could we have gotten if it hadn't been for that? Because as far as like a character goes, Anakin, young adult Anakin, is still awkward and weird and doesn't know how to talk to girls because he was a little kid who's not really interested in girls, and then he gets taken into the Jedi Order where that's poo-pooed upon, right? But, so I don't know, I see what you're saying, but I still find young Anakin more irritating because every time, and like his delivery of lines, if we're talking about like, because I think that's part of it with Hayden Christensen, is the delivery of the line. Not only were the lines poorly written, so he doesn't have great stuff to work with, but then the delivery is also terrible. Go and listen to some of the dialogue with young Anakin. That kid does not know how to inflect properly. Some of his lines where you're just like, why would you say it that way? You're going up when you should have gone down. Like, you make no sense, child. And then, bad dialogue on top of that.
Sure. Again, it doesn't stand out, or it didn't stand out to me like it did for Hayden Christensen. Jake Lloyd didn't stand out for me like it did for Hayden Christensen.
That scene when he's talking to Watto, it's one of the earlier scenes where you first meet him, and they're in Watto's shop, and he's talking Huttese, so I can't remember... I can't remember exactly what he says, but where he's just like, he's supposed to be like, playfully joking back, banter with Watto, and he's like, and like it's bad. It doesn't feel natural at all.
It just doesn't stand out like it does for Hayden Christensen. For me, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, Chris. What are your thoughts?
As judge, I would say that I found Jake Lloyd as Anakin more grating than Hayden. It's a close thing.
Yeah, it's close.
Like you've both acknowledged. Man, yeah, that's a rough one. Like, I'm kind of washing that out right now, particularly because, like, while on the one hand, Jake's young Anakin is really rough, but on the other hand, Hayden's is not, like, I would say it's not as rough, but then I remember he's supposed to be in a romance.
But here's where we go. George's bad writing, which plagues the whole prequel trilogy. We're going, what?
But again, we're talking about the merits of episode 1 and 2.
I don't know.
I mean, and there are also other oddities.
It is close. I think we can all admit, this is neck and neck over which is worse, because they're both bad.
Yeah. As far as Anakin's go ahead, finish what you're saying.
I think we've kind of talked the Anakins. I'm talking about other...
Okay, so yeah, I was going to say, as far as the Anakins go, I'm not really feeling that one is a clear point winner there. So, but as far as other dumb things, we've got Jar Jar, and so where else are we going here?
Well, for episode
dialogue
1, you have Jar Jar.
general, I mean, there's a lot of...
Yeah, but you got dialogue problems in both.
Yeah.
No, that's true, but which is worse then? That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so do we want... Let's go back then, just dumb things. Things that make you cringe and go, who thought that was a good idea?
In episode 2, the teacher to student comments from Obi-Wan to Anakin, if you studied your saber technique as much as you studied speeders, blah, 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 I had to pick the right speeder,
banter.
Yeah, and it's honestly, that took me out of it from a Star Wars film as much as You Have a Cute Boyfriend did in Force Awakens. The everything with the extra jetster. Again, why? Why go 50s diner?
I actually like that.
Yeah.
No, just because it's a little bit
terrible.
different, and we haven't seen that before. And I thought, why not have a 50s diner?
Aside from the why not argument, though, why does it bother you so much?
Well, because it's something that's in my world, right? This is something that's part of a history here on Earth, not in a galaxy far, far away.
But you got no problem with Palpatine's rise to power?
Because politics are the same everywhere.
That's fair. But I mean...
Well, but there's a difference between there's a difference between overarching of course that's going to show up, and this isn't a diner, this is a 50s diner,
right?
In Star Wars.
Well, and here's the other thing is that had they done a mixture of several different types of diners from history, that would have been fine. But it was that shape. It was the way of speaking from the waitress. It was the shape of the waitress who looked like she was out of the Jetsons. It was. I think they even had one of the little spinny things for a paper ticket to go from the back to the front. It just 100% of it was all just 50s diner. Yeah. And so it was just, it took me, I was no longer in a galaxy far, far away. I was in a, 1950s film. Right. When had you, you could have kept the shape of the restaurant, but put a different accent on the waitress, made her a little bit different shape. It would have been fine. Wouldn't have even noticed it, probably.
I liked it.
I will say it doesn't bother me, but I can definitely admit that is a valid criticism of that set piece. Yeah. So I'll grant that.
What's our category?
Dumb things. So
dumb things
so
in
episode
general?
1 so far, dumb things in general. I've mainly got Jar Jar. The Anakin's kind of washed out, so I've got a lot of Jar Jar. And episode 2, I've got that diner, You're not fond of the banter, but I'm going to kind of push that to dialogue when we discuss that. So we've got the diner, we've got... What else? Was great.
The slapstick for C-3PO at the end.
Oh, yeah.
I'm beside
3PO
myself,
slapstick.
you know.
Yeah.
See, but that's more the dialogue is the problem there. Not so much. I mean, C-3PO could...
I would say it's the repeated nature of it, that they keep coming back to that
like the
3PO doing...
Well, and the puns. Because like in rather than just poorly getting a point across, they're going out trying to be funny, and it just is not working.
Yeah.
For C-3PO.
It's not like the Porgs where it's a... Well, and I am going to say, the Porgs are... It's like, your problem with the Porgs when you were talking about it was, ha ha ha, okay. No, you drove it into the ground.
Courtesy laugh.
3PO's things were never funny in the first place. They were grating every single time.
Yes.
That's like saying Jar Jar was only annoying because he kept showing up. It's like, no, he was annoying from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
So, however, 3PO's punny behavior is a much smaller portion of episode 2 than Jar Jar is of episode 1. So there's that against that.
Ooh,
but you also have more weird things in episodes.
No, I'm saying there's that against 3PO.
Yeah, 3PO is less
of a problem because he's
because
basically
it's contained.
It's
to
basically
the arena.
from that factory section on
Mm-hmm.
that 3PO becomes slapstick to the point of absurdity,
whereas Jar
Jar is slapstick to the point of absurdity throughout the movie.
Yeah, the entire movie,
And
it's very nearly, and it might actually be every scene Jar Jar is in.
Yeah.
That there is some sort of like badoom, going on.
Again, but it's all centered around Jar Jar, even though he comes up several times. But then there are several different things in episode 2.
Several different but smaller things. Is there anything else you can point out in episode 1, Kyler?
Of just generally dumb
of just
things.
stuff that makes you go, why did you even do that? That's just dumb.
Well, and this, I don't know if you want to make pacing a separate issue, but like I think the length of the pod race itself, from the time they, okay, we're marching flags out on, pod races are getting lined up, to the time it ends, maybe a little long. I'm generally okay with that, but the build up to the pod race, now we have to go get this so that we can trade it for this, so that we can trade it for that, so that we can pay this guy for this and make this bet and then get this thing so that we can have a pod race.
Yeah.
It's way too long.
I will grant that, yeah. Now that's not dumb things, but it is definitely a problem.
Yeah, so like that. I mean, a lot of it, the dialogue with, midichlorians. Let's just throw that out there.
I will give you midichlorians.
There's not really a redeeming feature of the midichlorians, as far as I can tell. It takes the Force from this mystical, but hey, it binds us, it surrounds us, it binds the galaxy together.
Well,
cool, that's all the explanation I ever needed as a kid.
The midi-chlorians don't necessarily completely do away with the mysticism of it, because it's still something that's connecting you to mysticism.
I will grant them as a problem, though. They are unexplainable.
They didn't need to be there, but they're not as big of a deal as whatever makes them out to be.
I'll grant that. They're still a deal. They're still there.
But in a world where one of these movies goes away, if we get rid of episode 1, midichlorians never were a thing because they're never mentioned again.
But you still get the same mysticism, other than there's just a different way to connect you to the mysticism.
Yeah, but I don't... But the problem is trying to explain how it's connected is the problem. That's what kind of takes away some of the magic, But
again, I still see
so,
it's a minor problem.
Let's see, what else? There is... I gotta run through the movie in my head. Not to get all political here, but the pretty blatant racism in the
racial
with Jar
stereotyping.
Jar and the Trade Federation is
most of the heaviest
great.
of that stuff is in episode 1. It is true
because even in episode 2, the Trade Federation, they're there, but it's quite a
very
bit
minimal.
And Jar Jar has, I think, one line, and he speaks it relatively normally without so it's. Relative for him, I should say.
He's in the Senate chambers and when he meets Annie.
Yeah.
Anakin.
Yeah, but it's almost nothing. Whereas it's, every scene in episode 1. Because you're trading off either between
I forgot that
fake
episode
Asian...
2 also has the entire emergency powers to the Chancellor section is all in episode 2.
Yeah.
If you drop episode 2, then that's...
You don't get that in episode 3.
You don't necessarily need it, is the thing, though. When you've established him, he is the Chancellor, you don't really need to know how he
but that's the thing. They didn't establish... They barely got him there to Chancellor, and that's an important part of the historical arc. Either way, you still can't drop both of them. That's just something I forgot.
Let's see. Gosh, Maul is so good.
I would also add... the Gungans in general are pretty rough.
Okay, so some of the Gungans. Jar Jar is obviously terrible.
Yeah.
Brian Blessed as fetch, now I can't remember his name.
Boss Nass.
Boss Nass, thank you. Is not great. I don't think he's as bad as everybody else says, but it is kind of more towards Jar Jar. If they had done the Gungans more like Captain Tarpals, I would have been real happy with the Gungans. Because Captain Tarpals, he's serious, he talks funny, and that's okay because he's an alien. We need to show that he's different, so cool. But Captain Tarpals is great. All the Gungans that don't speak are great. It's the two Gungans they gave a ton of dialogue to that are the problems. Yeah. Boss Nass and Jar Jar.
Well, and and the only thing that's really wrong with Boss Nass is his propensity to shake his jowl and spit over everything.
I'm fine with him shaking his jowl, but it's the slobber that gets it, where it's just like, that is so bizarre. If you want to give the Gungans a cultural marker that maybe when they're frustrated or they want to be done, they shake their jowls. Okay, cool, right? Like, these are aliens with a diverse culture of their own, so let's show that. That's cool. But, like, the slobber just seemed childish, frankly, to reference our previous episode, right? It seemed just out of place and kind of weird, which then it takes it from something that could have been somewhat serious and makes it totally silly and
ruins
dumb.
The tone of that situation.
And like, if Boss Nass had not gone with his voice either, if he had just shaken and been like, no, we're not gonna, and like, that would have been like, okay, so that's a thing that Gungans do. Okay. And if they had showed other Gungans doing it too, to show that this is a cultural thing, instead of, oh, he's having a seizure on the throne or something, you know, like, it would have been, so that is pretty dumb. The whole traveling through the planet core, while beautiful, and gives us one of the greatest jokes in Star Wars, that there's always a bigger fish, which can be applied widely in your lives, people.
I cast summon bigger fish.
I cast summon bigger fish. Yep, exactly. Is pretty dang pointless to the plot.
It is. You're right.
You know, like,
the entirety of Otogunga is pretty
Yeah.
pointless, aside from simply establishing that these people are here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's...
Well, and also their relationships to the Naboo.
That's fair.
They do have
but
to
even so,
it's
a problem of, like, we're going to jump from place to place really fast. It's a similar thing.
So it's like they could... And again, it's beautiful to go through the planet core. It's really, really pretty. And all the cool monsters down there and, like, the bioluminescent creatures. Really cool looking. But... could have been shorter. It's kind of like the build up to the pod race. It's kind of like, oh, get there already. Get there. I'm ready to be done. I'm trying to think to the end. Point in its favor, but point against it. The space battle at the end. It is cool to see a space battle, but compared to other Star Wars space battles, it's very lackluster. And so that is kind of disappointing, because space battles are my all-time favorite thing, even above lightsaber battles in Star Wars. I love a good space battle. So that's, for me personally, a little bit like, oh man, I wish it were just a little bit more.
I will grant, I think that with, a few other little things that are going on with, that you see in the background and here and there, and just the overwhelming ridiculousness of Jar Jar, that the absurdity in Episode 1 does outweigh the absurdity in Episode 2 by a narrow margin, I think. It's very narrow, though.
It's basically like Episode 3. It's like, I'm going to punch you hard, Ross, 4 times in rapid succession. But in Episode 1, it's like, I'm going to punch you less hard, but for an hour.
I would actually describe it as Episode 1 is, hey, let's just be goofy, guys. Oh, crap. Nobody liked us being goofy. Okay, Episode 2, let's be less goofy. Oh, apparently people find a lot of the things we think are serious very goofy. Crap. So it's basically the same amount of goofiness, but at least they're trying, I guess? Maybe it is more of a wash. I don't know. Because I had forgotten the diner, too. If I'm granting that as a point of absurdity, then... that's kind of a wash. That's close. That's close. Okay, what else have we got? Let's do dialogue.
Oh... I'm going to go to my phone for some examples here. Because this is going to get good.
Every single freaking thing between Anakin and Padme.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Which is the majority of that film.
Yes.
Not the majority.
It is the heart of that film.
The heart of the film, but it's not the majority. Jar Jar is in the majority of shots in Episode 1. And every time he's in a shot, he is speaking, and every time he is speaking, it is bad.
Well,
you have fetching Qui-Gon Jinn, Liam Neeson, has to reach out his hand and grab his tongue and tell him to stop it, and you can see the irritation, not on Qui-Gon's face, but on Liam Neeson's face at what is happening.
Jar Jar's dialogue is horrible. But as far as, what about the dialogue around it? Where's the worst of that?
Most things Jake
because
Lloyd
having
says is
really
bad.
awful dialogue in a romance is a really nasty blow too. Because it's bad enough, like, these are supposed to be intimate, meaningful moments. Like, I can buy bad dialogue in a lot of other situations. Like, if Watto wants to have some bad lines, okay, whatever.
Okay, here we go.
But if we've got Anakin and Padme's relationship is falling flat because of bad dialogue, that's a lot.
Why don't
more
we do
painful.
this scientifically? We ready? We ready to do this scientifically? This is from Thought Catalog online. Okay, it's a website. Thought Catalog. 50 quotes from the Star Wars prequels ranked in order of terribleness. Why don't we count Episode 1 versus Episode 2?
That is far too subjective.
I'd love you to read me some of them.
Let's read some of them. Yusa thinking Yusa people gonna die? That's pretty bad.
That's number 1?
That's in Episode 1.
No, I'm sorry. That's number 1 on their list.
That's number 1 on the list, but I don't know if number 1 is the worst or if 50 is the worst, if it's going down the list to the worst.
Fair
Scroll
enough.
down real quick just to check.
Yeah, let me give us what number 50 is. Let's see.
Okay, number 50. This is from Episode 3, so it doesn't count. We live in a real world. Come back to it. You're studying to become a Jedi. I'm a senator.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad. That's from Episode
Anyway,
3.
okay. Go.
Your presence is soothing. I think that's Anakin, but I don't know if that's
That is
3 or
Anakin.
2.
That's 2.
Yeah,
It's when
I
he's
don't
standing on the
understand.
veranda.
that's
I
right.
don't know what that is. They live inside me? Oh, that's from Episode 1.
That's
Midichlorians, they
midichlorians.
live inside me? Oh. Symbionts. Also Baby Anakin. Your New Empire. Episode 3, so it doesn't count. Oh gosh, this is so
put that as a
bad.
terrible one? Because that's in the situation.
Yeah, this is a bad one, though.
Your
This is a
New
point in
Empire.
Episode 2's favor. Just being around her again is intoxicating. It's so bad. Episode 3, let's see. We used to come here for school retreat. We would swim to that island every day. I love the water. We used to lie out on the sand and let the sun dry us and try to guess the names of the birds singing. George Lucas, please don't write romantic dialogue ever. You were banished because you were clumsy. Oh yeah, or the line that precedes it. Misa, clumsy. Ugh.
Well, see, I don't.
You're in my very
those
soul,
in
tormenting
context.
me. That whole scene is just awful. There was no father. I carried him. I gave birth. I raised him. I can't explain what happened. Padme's mom, or Anakin's mom. That's pretty.
But in context, what?
And she delivers that line so woodenly.
It's not
terrible.
the best writing or delivery, but
I'll try spinning. That's a good trick.
yeah.
Now this is pod racing. More from that terrible love scene. That whole thing is just awful.
Yeah, everything.
Oh, George, come on. I wrote better fanfic than that in my high school journal. Let's see.
Prove it.
Don't make me bust it out and say names. Let's see. Oh, that's from Episode 3, too. From my point of view, the Jedi are evil. It's so bad. Maybe Episode 3 should be the one that we cut. No, let's see. Yeah, there it is. Now, this is pod racing. It's just terrible. Oh, whatever. Okay, I'm going to butcher this Huttese, but it's what Annie says to Sebulba. When he's like, oh, you're blah, blah, blah. Chisco Sebulba, Chipoka Umangisa, Mitisa Radical Fubambati Chopchawa. You know, like, it's so, when he's like, you almost expect him to do, like, the little snap, you know, the sassy snap at the end. That's pretty bad.
What did it translate to, though?
They didn't have a translation here. It's
It does
basically like, I'm going to
Yeah,
crush you in the
that's
pod
what
race, Sebulba, something like that.
Something.
Or, my favorite here, how wooed. And he sticks his tongue out like, oh, gag me with a spoon,
Should
Mrs.
alien
Henderson.
languages count as terrible writing?
Well,
The translation, maybe.
The
but
translation.
the
I'm
actual
more
line-
concerned about the translation.
I don't mind him speaking Huttese.
It's
that's
not even
fine,
the delivery
but
I'm looking at. I'm just looking
his
at
delivery
the
there is
lines.
terrible, especially because it feels like he's missing the little sassy snap at the end, you know. But yeah, Jar Jar, how wooed! Oh my goodness, you are not one of the Ashley Olsen, or not one of the Olsen twins. Stop it! You don't get to say that. You're not on Full House. And then when he sticks his tongue out and does the little hands up by his ears, you know, it's just like, are you 5 years old? For reals, Jar Jar? Let's see. Ye gods, what's Misa saying? You know, ugh. Jar Jar, everything he says is terrible. There's always a bigger fish, which is awesome. I'm not counting it as a bad line. Let's see. Greg Proops. As much as we love Greg Proops, I don't care what universe you're from, that's gotta hurt during the pod race. That's kind of cheesy a little bit.
I'm leaning, though. I gotta say.
That's something an announcer would say.
Yeah, announcers can be cheesy.
So, we have one exceptionally atrocious scene.
No. We have one exceptionally atrocious relationship that is the heart of the entire movie. It's not one scene. It's every scene those two have together from the beginning of the movie to the end.
Yeah. Their awkward flirting on the transport.
And that's the thing for me that I'm like, Jar Jar's really annoying, which is why he was weighted so heavily against multiple instances of absurdity in episode 2, is because he is so absurd. But I can bear awful dialogue better from a child and a ludicrous puppet than I can in what is supposed to be a romantic relationship. And that's what undermines it in the end. Is like, yeah, it's these things are going on, but at the end of the day, watching it, I can go, okay, that dude is just an idiot, and this kid is a kid, so kids are weird, and it's hard to take anything a kid says seriously. But these two people are supposed to be falling in love, and I cannot buy a single word of it. So I think on the dialogue, I'm going to give it to episode 2 is worse.
Man. What else? What else do we have?
You guys tell me. We could talk just sheer visuals, and now we're not talking spectacle and action sequence, just the visuals in general.
Episode 2, definitely better. CGI had progressed quite a bit more.
That is also.
I am willing to give some allowance to.
Yeah, but like I've gone back
time.
And watched episode 1 because even though it is my least favorite of the prequel trilogy, I still don't mind it. I really, especially the last battle. I do enjoy the last, half hour or so, whatever the battle takes. But the droids. At the beginning, the droids, they look almost fuzzy because of the CGI, like when they're moving and stuff.
The deficiency of the CGI are one thing, but I'm talking just like composition, like shots that you could take and hang on your wall.
Shots that you can take and hang on your wall. It's still one of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars. And this is why episode 1 I have such a love-hate relationship. I don't like it overall, but there are moments where I'm like, that needs to be lifted out of the garbage heap of the movie and placed on a pedestal because it's amazing. The Battle of Naboo, the opening shot, when you have you're looking down the line of MMTs, the
tanks,
the droid tanks that unload everybody. That you see them pull up one by one, and you're looking down the line, and then the music kind of gets quiet, and you're like, "Hey, these are obviously weapons of war, but what's going to happen?" Because you haven't seen these in action before. And the front opens out. And all you hear are some birds, and then the machine starts rolling out, and the droids come down, and they get plopped out, and you're like, okay, so these are troop transports, what? And then the droids activate, and the music starts there. Like, that scene of looking down the line, and then they start opening their doors is amazing.
Well, and there was a lot of work that went into that scene, too, to also make it look a little more realistic, because they, even though they're robots and they're droids and everything, they staggered the animation so that everything wasn't happening literally all at the same time.
Yeah, and it shows and it
does.
Looks
it
beautiful.
Makes a big difference, yeah. Everything with Theed, like every shot of Theed, I love.
Theed is beautiful.
Theed is gorgeous.
Filmed in Italy, by the way, which brings it close and dear to my heart.
I like the approach to Udogunga. Just because that is
Udogunga visually is quite intense.
Really cool, yeah. The bubble city underwater is really cool looking. Episode 2, we talked about this just for the cool actionness of it, but honestly, the actual shots of the final battle, of the Battle of Geonosis in episode 2, are so cool. I talked about this earlier when they shoot down the control center for Lucrehulk, and it crashes, and it sends up this dust cloud, and then they're firing in the dust, and it's highlighting silhouettes. That is visually spectacular.
All of the action is from...
Anakin... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
All the action is filmed from the perspective of the troops on the ground.
Yeah,
good choice.
It's really
very,
cool.
very good choice.
Although you do get some cool like pan shots as it pans up, and you see like the
transitioning,
further distance of the battlefield where the like troops are getting dropped off in the gunships and stuff, and that's also cool.
Yeah.
Anakin and Padme being drawn out into the arena
is a cool shot.
Is
very cool
quite
shot.
lovely. And, well
and
done.
honestly, actually, despite their relationship not feeling real one iota, which I agree, but their kiss
That
as they're
moment's-
entering
yeah, it
is
does-
really,
it almost
really
sells
cool.
it.
Except for the dialogue before it.
Well,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
yeah.
saying is like the dialogue ruins their relationship and doesn't sell it at all. But when
But if
they
you just
lean
took
into,
that
as that
separate
image,
from
that
everything that
frame
came
shot,
before it,
yeah,
that would be a nice little moment.
it's really cool. Mace Windu holding his lightsaber out to Jango Fett's neck is pretty dang cool, and to just be like, oh snap, it's about to go down.
Did he have his new iced lightsaber at that point, or was that his older one?
What do you mean?
Mace Windu had 2 lightsabers.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, one was they're basically physically the same, but it was like his second one was like platinum. It was a lot more shiny.
Oh,
A lot more.
well,
chrome.
that was probably episode.
in episode 2,
3.
it was like golden hilt or something.
No,
Well,
it's
'cause
silver,
it is.
but
Because they're emblems of silver and gold in both.
oh man,
Okay.
But his later one is much more shiny.
Huh.
Because a lot of the lightsabers are very matte in their material,
Yeah.
except for like
Well, that's the
Darth
first time
Vader's.
we see his lightsaber, so
Yeah.
probably he didn't have his new one. by
yeah.
then. I remember watching that and going, he has a purple what now?
yeah.
The one shot that I like, it's not really that great. I don't know. I like it, but in episode 1 at the beginning of the pod race, when they're all walking the flags out in front of each, that's a pretty cool visual. I think,
And also,
and it's a definite callback to like Ben-Hur, because that's what they do in Ben-Hur.
and it works very well with the music as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how that
Oh,
fanfare starts.
talking about music again, man.
Hold on.
Oh,
Finish the visuals,
sorry.
and then we'll jump to music. But
Well, this has to do with the visuals. Again, going back to that where they're unloading the droids on the top of the hill. That music, it's only about 45 seconds long. It's called Activate the Droids, is the piece. Is my favorite music in all of Star Wars, bar none. I love that. I will listen to that on, I'll go on YouTube and be like, give me a 10-hour version of that, and I'm going to play that while I play, Empire at War or something.
Yeah.
I love it.
I like the exterior visuals of Camino,
Very cool.
especially contrasted with the weirdly fuzzily Flash Gordon-y interiors of Camino. I like that.
Speaking of Camino, when they show him the growth chambers for the clones, and you kind of get the full scale of the cloning facility, that's a very impressive visual. Especially because it was all CGI. I think it's really cool to see all the tubes and they're growing and
shot,
whatever. Yeah. I really like that. Although I like it better in the Clone Wars TV show when the Separatists attack Camino and they break all the cloning tubes, or a bunch of the cloning tubes. The special effects they have in there for all the falling, shimmering glass and stuff is so cool.
Nice.
Oh man, can't wait for you to get to that episode, Chris.
Let's see. And I like you mentioned this earlier. I like the Coruscant underworld. It's getting to see parts of Coruscant that, Coruscant in the first one, it's cool. It's pretty, but
You
I
don't
think
really
Coruscant,
see much aside from the Senate and the Jedi Temple.
yeah, a
When
couple
they approach,
exterior shots here and there.
That's about
But
it.
I
Yeah,
would
you
say
see an approach
Coruscant
shot to
in
the
episode
planet,
2
yeah.
is probably more solid.
Yeah.
Well, there's more of it.
Yeah, there's more of it, but it's just the shots that we get of it, I think, are also more visually dynamic.
Yeah.
Getting to see this nightlife of it, getting to get down to the ground.
And it shows you a bunch of different biomes, if you want to call it that, too, because you go through an industrial park as well.
Yeah,
where it's
that's
not really
true when they're
populated.
on
It's
that
just
chase.
this is the factory part of the planet, and there's the exhaust, the flames, the power plant or whatever. And then
Although I
finally
will
get
say
into
that starts to get a little video gamey too, just like that
It does.
factory bit.
Yes, but then when they finally crash and you're walking through and you're actually seeing the clubs and the bars and the nightlife and people out enjoying their Saturday night or whatever is pretty cool.
In the first one, I remember really enjoying the first time we really get to see the Senate chamber and just the sheer scale of that. And
In episode 1,
yeah, I like that. We get to see it again in episode 2, but credit for that goes to episode 1, I'd say.
This is a cool visual just because it makes me think of another movie I like. Episode 1, when Newt Gunray tells him to commence the invasion of Naboo. And all the...
the ship's breaking away down to...
and they go down totally like Independence Day. This is what it makes me think of, that you got the motherships releasing all the little ships and then they fly down. That's a pretty cool look, especially because you see the whole fleet around Naboo doing the same thing, and it's a pretty cool shot.
Yep.
Anytime that there's a whole lot of little things doing the same thing at the same time makes my heart happy.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's why. And we mentioned this too. The final scene in episode 2, of all the clones boarding.
Yep.
Like, that is a gorgeous moment. It's so pretty. And then, like, when the engines kick on and you hear that hum, and then it begins to lift, like, boy, that's a cool moment.
And a lot of the space battle between Obi-Wan and Jango are also
Is really pretty.
Yeah.
And that's like, say what you will about the weapons being dumb or whatever, but like when those sonic charges explode and rip through the asteroids, that's dang cool.
Yeah.
It looks so cool.
I think I'm feeling episode 2 on the visuals there, Russ.
Although, I think we've mentioned more episode 1 things than we have episode 2.
I don't know if we have.
I think it's been pretty much 1 for 1.
I just remember we spent the first half of this little conversation just talking about episode 1, and then we started sprinkling episode 1 and 2.
Don't let him sway you, Chris.
Well, let me
from
see.
your
I'm
righteous judgment.
counting in my head. I'm like, okay, Geonosis, this, and this. Camino, this.
You know what, actually, though?
This.
Point against episode 2. There's one transition between Anakin is doing something on Tatooine. I think it's when he's riding out on that swoop bike at first.
Mm-hmm.
And then it cuts right to Obi-Wan sneaking into a pillar on Geonosis. Those two places are not visually distinct enough to make that sort of jump cut like they did.
But they look really pretty. Like when
No,
he's
they
on the
do not.
swoop bike riding through the Jundland Waste and all those columns and stuff, that looks really pretty. And with that sunset in the background, yeah.
I mean, the one sunset
it's
shot
way pretty.
I'll give you, but the rest of it,
I'm not even talking about the one where it pulls back and you see the speeder at the bottom kind of going through
There's
it.
one that's looking across him, and there's a sunset in the background that I like.
I was just thinking the one that's kind of mostly focused on him, but you see a lot of the columns and stuff zipping past him. I think it's really pretty.
See, and for episode 1, part of it for me is like, I will grant that it's cool seeing those droids, function together and everything. I think it's undercut by the somewhat blandness of the setting there.
Yeah,
Like,
those
you
grassy
compare that
hills.
to Geonosis, and I get why that had to happen with limitations of technology, but comparing that to what's going on Geonosis with all of the action there.
There's significantly more to look at.
Yeah, and just, with that falling, that blast of coolness, but it's visually, I'm thinking of the arena, and I'm thinking of that battle, moments in that battle. I'm thinking of Camino. I'm thinking of Coruscant in that chase scene.
There's quite a bit.
But again, we're
Episode 1's giving me
you're
Theed.
forgetting, Theed.
It's giving me
you
opening
have
moments
Theed,
of that
you have a
pod
final
race.
and a pod race.
And
we talked about.
yeah, it's here. Got
Yeah.
the droid army coming out and everything. We've got Otogunga.
So you have like 4 or 5 things in episode 1, but it seems like you have like 6 or 7 things in episode 2.
Well, but I had forgotten Otogunga, and we had also mentioned we've got the interior of whatever's going on with those pillars of light for that lightsaber battle.
Yeah, there's
Is a pretty dynamic visual
thing that's
visual
way too
visual
close to the
wise. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird, but visually it is very engaging.
But I also liked when we didn't mention like a lot of the droids' approaches to Theed. Queen Amidala looking out the windows in that typical dress. I always like that shot of her looking out the window.
That's fair. That is a good shot. I could see that breaking even. So similar, like the general quality of the shots is better in number 2, but I'm willing to chalk that up to advances in technology and not just artistry, failure of artistry or success of artistry. So I might put those on par. I'm all right there. So music then. What were you saying with music?
Oh, music.
Well, I think we've already talked about episode 1, with the exception of Across the Stars.
It has Activate the Droids, which is my all-time favorite, even more than the Imperial March or anything like that. I love Activate the Droids just because
Really? Huh.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
It is good music.
It's very menacing, yeah.
It's so powerful. It just, oh man, and I'll never get it out of my head of those visuals of them, their arms cranking up and then they all stand up, grab the guns, hold it like, oh man, it's so cool. I love it.
So you got that. You've got, of course,
got
Duel of the
Duel
Fates.
of the Fates, which is so good.
The opening, the music that goes with the pod race is really good.
I can't think of what
They
it
call
is
it
at
the
all.
flag parade.
The flag parade is solid.
I don't think it's terribly recognizable, though. Episode 2, though, you do have the love theme, the Across the Stars, which is really pretty great.
When I bought the albums for episode 1, I would hit the opening title track, the Duel of the Fates track, the flag parade, and then basically everything after the start of all the action sequences at the end. Especially in particular, one piece of music I like the best is when Anakin is flying out of the... Well, it's the now this is pod racing line. Because it's Light of the Force, but it's I don't know, it's different. It's juicier, I guess. It's a speed version of it, maybe is the best way to put it.
So I'm looking at episode 1. Obviously, Duel of the Fates is a significant point of its favor. I remember the Activate the Droids music. I remember the moment of the flag marching, the March of the Flags, and that being a musically punchy moment. I'm trying to think of musically punchy moments in episode 2, and all I'm really getting is when they're wheeled out into the arena.
Which is
across the stars. Yeah.
I think episode 1 has the better music. It's sad to say. I mean,
it's all excellent, of course. That was just as far as musically impacting you with the music.
That was the other half of my story, is that I had lots of stuff I listened to in episode 1, and then just Across the Stars in episode 2. There wasn't anything else.
Well, and that's the other thing, too, is when I talk about the music, it's like, episode 4, you've got music that you hear that and you know exactly what movie that's from.
Yeah.
Episode 2, you hear Across the Stars and you go, most people can go, oh yeah, that's episode 2. You hear Duel of the Fates and nobody is gonna know what that's from.
Well, and Duel of the Fates has the additional, or the Across the Stars has the additional slight problem with me as a judge that I remember hearing that, and I don't remember at this point what it was, but I remember hearing that and going, I would try and sing that out loud to myself, and I kept getting it confused with another John Williams theme from a different movie.
So basically,
it's distinct.
It's very similar to one of the love themes from the Indiana Jones.
Yes, and it's kind of like the Harry Potter. Everybody praises the Harry Potter music, and it's really solid. But every time I hear it, I go, "Yeah, that sounds like the Hook music that you also wrote."
Yes, it does.
It is very similar.
It's interesting because it's like episode 1 and 2 both, I think, only have really one iconic piece of music. Where if you came up to somebody on the street and you're like, can you identify where this is from? Play.
Well, but you have Anakin's theme from episode 1 is better.
But if you played it right now, would I be able to tell you what it's from? You know what I mean? Like,
probably Anakin's theme. Yeah,
I could.
Well, you could. Yeah, but I think Duel of the Fates is more recognizable as that's the music from episode 1 at the end than. Across the Stars is recognizable as that's their going into the arena love music. I think Duel of the Fates is more recognizable.
Sure,
that's all I'm saying.
Sure,
and so then that's a point in episode 1's favor.
There is also episode 2, the Imperial March, almost.
Oh yeah,
which was good during the loading of the acclimators.
Yeah, which is so good. I love it.
But I think I still will give.
But I think your average person, if you have them listen to that almost Imperial March, they wouldn't be able to tell you,
right?
Because it sounds so close. But Across the Stars, they'd go, "Oh, I know," and definitely Duel of the Fates. Everybody knows. Oh, that's Darth Maul's music.
Yep.
Which is interesting because it's so light and cheery for a Sith. But everybody associates it with Darth Maul fighting in that hallway, getting
light cheery. Yeah, but
it's not like that kind of deep resonating a lot of music that goes with a lot of the other Siths.
It's doom-filled march.
Right. Yes, that's what I mean. Is compared to the other Siths' music.
Yeah,
it's much
it
more
also
light.
basically sparked off a long trend of let's do faux Latin. Chanting in all of our music.
Not faux Latin. It is actually a real
that
language.
One is, but
it is Sanskrit.
Yeah, most of them do use real ones, but you get a lot of it. It's just we're going for some. The Matrix, the original Matrix did not do that, but the Matrix sequels did that, and there are a number of other action movies.
It's cool though. John Williams.
Let's do the O Fortuna. That's basically John Williams went, hey, let's take O Fortuna, but make a version of that for Star Wars, and it was awesome. And then everybody went, let's O Fortuna the crap out of our action.
Well, and it's also instrumental music for video games, which started with Halo.
Yeah,
did that. When John Williams did that though for Star Wars, excuse me, he had 5 different languages done up. He's like,
did he really?
He said here's kind of what I want it to say. Come up with it in 5 different languages. I think it was 5.
Yeah.
And then listened to all of them and picked the one that he liked best, that he thought would fit the Star Wars universe best, and that's how Sanskrit got in there.
Interesting.
So that was kind of cool that, dude, you went to that effort? That's awesome.
Okay. So yeah, I will grant music to number 1. Number 1 wins on music. Pacing you've brought up. As far as moments where it just drags and is going on too long, how do we compare?
Oh, well, you've got the too long trip through the planet core.
Yep.
Well, but that trip doesn't take very long, though.
Yeah, but the
it's
whole
still
thing is
too
pointless.
long.
Yeah.
The fact that it doesn't need to be there at all means that every second it's happening is too long.
Yeah.
The lead up to the pod race, there is way too much of chasing down this piece to give to this guy, to that guy, whatever. That could be like 5 minutes as opposed to, I think it's around 20 is what it's bad.
I will grant that.
There is maybe a little bit too much between the time that Anakin or Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are ambushed to the time that they get to the planet. Like, there's a little too much sneaking around. I mean, maybe, but I mean, like, maybe a minute too long. It's pretty close. It feels like there's a excessive talking as far towards the end of the movie before they finally commit to the battle, and we're going to break into Theed, and we're going to free the... Like,
I agree with that.
It's like that could have been tightened up quite a bit and saved probably 5 minutes or so there. I think there's probably overall... probably close, like maybe 35 minutes that you could cut out of episode 1 to just tighten it up and not really miss much of anything.
Yep, I will grant that. What about episode 2? Can you think of any major drags in that? Or
the chase on Coruscant takes way too long.
I will grant that.
I would have cut it literally in half.
I wouldn't have cut the actual chase on foot down. I think that's perfectly
no, not the foot.
But the speeder chase.
Yeah, the dodging around the fire stacks and
it's a cool visual.
And the factory, the entire factory is super
scene but that's only maybe 5 minutes.
It's
the whole
forever
factory.
long.
It feels longer than I think it actually is. And I think it's probably only about 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes too long on the actual speeder chase.
Yeah, but it feels...
But it does feel too long.
I think there was a lot of talking on Camino in the cloning vats. I think there's a little bit too much.
I don't... there is a lot of talking, but that's mostly of, we need to give you a whole bunch of plot information.
Well, but I'm not talking like little drags. I'm talking like moments where it's just like, why is this going on so long?
Yeah, so the speeder chase on Coruscant definitely counts. The factory, definitely.
Well, but I think there's a lot of that in Camino though as well.
Yeah,
because them walking through, there's just a lot. It's a big info dump.
That's fair.
Honestly, you could have done a quick explanation of we clone stuff here. You know, they're special order. They're genetically modified. They're faster.
I do like
have the conversation with.
But I think if you take out that space, there needs to be a little bit of breathing room to help you build the tension of confusion that Obi-Wan is feeling of how did this come here? Who paid for the Jedi paid for this? Who said so? Like, without those moments for you to sort of digest it and see Obi-Wan,
he goes over all that again in his message to the Jedi Council.
Right, but I think if you take those points away, if you take those moments away, because they're not long moments, because it's not overly long. I mean, you could sure take out a minute or two.
I would put that in the same category as, you know, the time it takes for Anakin or for Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon to. From the moment they get betrayed.
A little thing.
It is a little thing. There is definitely some space there.
I think it would have been better cut shorter on explanation of the clones, conversation with Jango. Obi-Wan interrogates Jango, then gone into the transmission back. I think that could have done everything, and you could have saved several minutes.
Yep, I would stack those two against each other. There's also the fact that most of the romance evokes that feeling of just like, oh god, how long are we going to do this?
Yes, but that's...
And their trip takes a while.
It's so bad.
There's a lot of exposition just on their way on that as they're posing as refugees.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have snipped several things here and there.
I still feel like there's like more minutes of wasted screen time in episode 1.
I will tell you why I'm going to give pacing problems to episode 1 being worse. Is because episode 1 simultaneously manages to drag on too long and yet move too quickly from place to place.
That's fair.
And that was the big one, because I remember watching that in the theater and being like, oh wow, that's so cool, and then watching it again the second time as a 13-year-old and going, holy cow, this is so fast-paced. It's the very first time I remember in my life looking at a story and going, the pacing is wrong. Like, so
you observant child, you.
Yeah, no, I was a teenager, but I just remember that because it's so odd that I would remember the first time I recognized pacing in a story, and it was episode 1. So pacing is a problem. 2 wins there. Okay. So, what other factors? I had something else in mind. Either of you got anything that stands out to you?
My brain is about empty.
Yeah, that's fair. There's something else I was gonna... I mean, and there, I'll give some moment. There's some... Oh, wait, okay. Redeeming moments. Moments that make you go, but wait, this is why it's all worth it.
Oh, man. Well, the last about 20 minutes, half hour of episode 1 for me. The battle, the lightsaber fight is just bloody incredible.
See, I'll grant it to the lightsaber fight, but I feel the lightsaber fight is bogged down by literally everything else that is going on there.
I love the land battle there. The space battle, it's neither here nor there for me, but the land battle with activate the droids, you got those beautiful visuals. You do have a really cool shield on the back of the Fombas that comes down. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
And then it breaks down into sort of hand-to-hand combat when the droids come through, and that, it's a pretty cool fight.
Yeah.
But that's about it. Yeah, that's true.
To be honest, for both movies, I don't think that's enough to redeem.
No, it's just...
No, but
these
I'm
are
just
the
looking for
redeeming
moments that you're like, no, but this is really solid.
Yeah,
like,
it's like
if
the
you're
movie
talking about
sucks,
this movie,
but there's this cool
the
thing.
moments that make us go, no, but this is really great. The moments that make us go, we still love the prequels.
And I feel like we've already talked about all those, though. I mean,
Episode-
the fights in both are good.
One thing that we haven't talked about, really, though, is Anakin and Obi-Wan versus Count Dooku. I think the Yoda fight is too over the top to be cool. I think it's kind of dumb. I think their fight is pretty cool. There's some cool swordsmanship.
Yeah, I think there should have been a lot more that happened there. I mean, Obi-Wan goes down basically instantly.
The final battle... Oh, this is what we've talked about the arena battle in general, but honestly, like the Acklay, the big crab, green crab, is dang cool looking. And
Monster,
its stuff, that's really cool. I like that part. Like, if you're going to skip episode 2, watch the arena battle on.
My sister is an artist, likes to cite episode 1 in particular for its costuming. That is some Amidala stuff there.
Yeah, that's really pretty.
And for pointing out to us eternally just how similar Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman look.
One thing we also didn't talk about for the arena fight, though, is the gratuitous sexuality of... what's the name of the tiger monster?
The Nexu.
And that's the Nexu. They're getting up to the pole and just kind of tearing half her shirt off.
Conveniently giving her a midriff.
So, okay, how to say this politically correctly. Totally over the top and definitely unnecessary, and served the one and only function of disrobing partially Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
That being said, the target audience was me, a... 14, 15-year-old boy?
I can also grant
Natalie
that as
Portman
having some
is a beautiful, beautiful woman.
I can grant that as having some roots in old pulp things as well, but even so, it's still gratuitous.
But I mean, and again, the physics are wrong. I mean, the thing paws her, and she's just kind of
see, and that's the thing. I was a 15-year-old boy going, Natalie Portman, how did that work? How did that get torn off? Like, if I could be distracted from Natalie Portman's midriff as a horny teenage boy and go to go, how does that even make sense?
And I remember doing the same thing in the theater.
And then she jumps off the top of that pillar and lands on the rhinoceros thing.
Yeah.
I mean, completely straddles it. That would kill.
Yes.
Yeah, even a girl, that would be very painful.
And I do remember, though, in theaters, because it scratches her back, and it shows her back, and it shows that her shirt has 3 fairly clean rips in it, and they're bleeding. And the very next time you see her entire midsection is disrobed.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was exactly like you. I was like, wait, how did that happen? Oh, man.
How about actors? Like, actors that really stand out as, ooh, they sold that. You mentioned Liam Neeson for the first one.
It's phenomenal. Yeah.
Ewan
McGregor in both movies, I think.
Particularly in number 2.
Number 2, he is better in, but he's still... But again, also, remember, he is a young Padawan in episode 1.
See, I would say he does a decent job in episode 1, but he's not like, oh yeah, that is a reason to watch this movie for me. Yeah. Whereas Liam Neeson is like, I will watch Liam Neeson be a Jedi all day.
That might be due to the roles, though. And
it might be, but...
Because... Liam Neeson is supposed to be, look, I'm a Jedi Master. I'm not even a Jedi Knight. I'm a Jedi Master. I've been at this game a while.
Yeah.
So I know how things, and you see that. He's like, Obi-Wan, no, here's how we do things. Trust me, watch how I do this, follow my lead. He's very much the old wise mentor. Where Ewan McGregor is supposed to be portraying a little bit of like a rambunctious youngster.
Rambunctious for a Jedi.
And so and then you put a rambunctious, a little bit wild, thinks he's funny because he says some dumb lines too, where he's like, "Oh, you're right, the negotiations were short," you know, and you see Liam Neeson just like, "Okay, let's move on. That wasn't funny, Padawan," you know, but. That is also exactly the character he's supposed to be portraying. It's kind of like Luke. Well, he's a whining teenager, yes, but that's exactly who he's supposed to be right now.
And you know what? The Obi-Wan goofiness stays consistent across the series.
It does a little bit. He does have some dumb lines, but that's what I'm saying is, even though he's a little bit goofy and less serious than Episode 2, but that should be to his credit because that's exactly who he's supposed to be in Episode 1.
I wouldn't even say they were dumb. They're just him trying to be goofy. I mean, he's like, it's almost like he's getting into the dad jokes.
Yeah, too early.
You know?
Yeah. But that should be to his credit because that's the kind of character he should be playing. And then to have him in the very next movie going, okay, now I am the wise master trying to curtail my rambunctious wild.
I think when you particularly sold it through each of those as, yes, I am the youth, and then I am the not as experienced master trying to be the master that you saw in the first one, and then by the third one, I am that master. Yeah. I think, you
and so I would say, even though I like the performance of, I like the character and performance of number 2 better, I'm going, dang, you still did a great job with what you were supposed to be in 1.
Yep, I'll grant that.
So he's fantastic. Mace Windu, of course, in Episode 2. Samuel L. Jackson is great.
He doesn't have a lot to do in Episode 1.
He doesn't have a lot to do,
nice,
except show up and be a total baddie, which he does.
Yes.
3D Yoda is better than Puppet Yoda.
Yes, I agree.
Come on.
3D Yoda in Episode 2 and 3 is better than Puppet Yoda from Episode 1, but not better from Puppet Yoda in 4 and 5.
Right.
There. Okay.
That's
I'm on
that's
board
where
with
we're
that.
at.
That's what I mean.
I will grant that.
Okay.
I remember also I remember being floored by 3D Yoda when that I was just like, oh my gosh, they did what? That is so cool.
And Frank Oz, of course, delivers a stellar performance in all 3 of them.
Always.
And they got Yoda to look like Yoda in Episode 2.
Yeah.
I think also...
Well, because the Puppet Yoda in Episode 1 did not look like Yoda.
See, and I'm picking at little things here, right? Because I've been keeping track of all these different categories we discussed, and we're at a tie right now. And so I'm looking for tiebreakers, basically.
I think also you get... what the heck was his name? I think it was Morrison is his last name. Jango Fett.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He does a really good job at being a bad A Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And even though he has very few lines, just like his son will eventually have, the lines that he does deliver, though, are really pretty good. And that stone-cold veneer he has when he's getting grilled by Obi-Wan is pretty dope.
He is solid.
And then when he speaks in a language to his kid that Obi-Wan doesn't understand, be like, cover up the evidence, kid, while still keeping like this perfect composure. That's pretty...
Yeah.
He does a great job.
Even young Boba himself, I did like.
He does a great job, too.
So villain-wise, too, we've got Darth Maul in the first one, and we see glimpses of Sidious.
Yeah,
in episode
one scene.
or
2
in a
scenes,
couple
sorry.
Scenes, but glimpses.
Dooku is awesome.
Dooku, man.
Dooku
Christopher Lee is...
And Jango, basically.
So here's the thing. Darth Maul is really cool, but we only see him really do 2 things. Jump off his speeder and attack Obi-Wan, or Qui-Gon, and then have a really cool lightsaber fight. We don't really get to see him perform as a character, really.
Yep, I'll grant that.
And Count Dooku, we do see him do some lightsaber stuff that looks kind of cool. But also, he's Christopher Lee. He's got that gravitas.
Gravitas is exactly the word I was going to use.
He just exudes power and command. You know what I mean?
Darth Maul, I'm almost inclined to... I kind of chalk that up to the visuals, like knocking Episode 1 up slightly higher in the visuals category, because everything about his design
is way cool.
Is excellent, and Ray Park's performance of him as just this barely restrained fury.
Can you imagine how cool it would have been to like fuse the gravitas and commanding presence of Count Dooku with Darth Maul's look and abilities? Oh my gosh, never give me another villain again.
It's like, but I like the barely contained rage of them all is part of what sells that. I like them
and that's true. They are 2 different villains, and Dooku is more of a scalpel.
And so, and visually wise, watching just as far as sheer villain imposingness, Maul is definitely more impressive, but as far as character goes, Dooku is a vastly superior character.
And he's so cool. And one of my favorite scenes, too, is when Obi-Wan is trapped, and Dooku comes in, and he tries to play it off as, oh, my buddy, let me see if I can help you. Because he says it is fairly convincing. The first time watching it, I'm like, you're supposed to be the bad guy, but I genuinely believe you might try to help.
I had
I
already read the book by the time I saw that, so I already knew. But
no, I remember going into the theater, watching it for the first time, and I'm going, I know you're the bad guy, but I get the feeling that you may actually help him for old time's sake.
No.
Just this once.
No,
and then, of course, he's like, oh, you're not going to do what I want? Okay, boom. Nope. Actually, no, screw you. I'm done.
It's great. You already saw him leading the entirety of the Separatist armies, talking to the Techno-Union and Banking Clan and all the rest of that stuff in that meeting that Obi-Wan is sneaking in on.
Yes.
There's no reason to believe that he's going to help Obi-Wan out.
Why not? Couldn't there be good in him like there is in Vader?
No! Not when he's leading that army.
Anyway. Right, not like when Vader was leading the Empire.
Okay, tell me if there's any categories I'm missing
different
here.
Situation.
I've got the music, the visuals, the action, the absurdity, the dialogue and other writing, the pacing is the rest of the writing, and how useless each of these movies are, which the uselessness was kind of a wash for me. Music and general visuals and dialogue I gave to number 1 as the winner.
Visuals?
It was basically visuals. What bumped it up for me was, if we're gonna like Darth Maul and the costume design and everything versus costume design and stuff for number 2. If I lump that into visuals, I kind of feel like that, because I didn't feel like that's enough, at least for me, because I'm not that visually oriented. But episode 2, though, we get to see the clones. That's a really cool visual, and I like those clone
and
troopers. Also
the Geonosians look really cool. And Poggle the Lesser with his like little face tentacle things, you know. He's ugly, but like he's a cool looking alien, and he's got like his cool chains and stuff. Like I remember being like, I want to know more about this guy.
See, and I was always interested in the Gungans and all of the way that their society.
I liked the Gungans, but they were tainted permanently by Jar Jar.
If we were to give us another category of, like, if we did aliens as a category, I would say that number 2 pulls ahead.
Oh, for sure.
And then,
you mean in interest or variety?
In design, just in general, like I mean, Jar Jarring is literally a puppetry term for movement that has no meaning and that has no logical meaning behind it. There's a reason, and Jar Jar, while he is the most excessive of the Gungans, that is a trait that the Gungans all share to a certain degree.
Yes, because they had to model all the Gungans off of Jar Jar and say, okay, he's the stereotype here for this race. What are we going to do? Oh, it's so bad.
Do either of you have any more major arguments you want to make, or we?
Ships, vehicles, I guess. I mean, we see a ton more new vehicles that look really cool in episode 2 than in episode 1. In episode 1, we get the droid fighters, the Lucrehulk battleship, and then a Naboo starfighter.
I think that all still comes down to visuals, though, because that's the same kind of talent.
Well, I don't know.
That's creating those.
I would also there's a lot of really cool design on both of those, and there's cool stuff there. If we're more or less tying this up,
yeah, I think so.
It's still so close, and some enterprising fan on Facebook could absolutely sway me another direction. But I think I'm gonna go just ever so barely with episode 1 is the worst film.
Yes!
Yeah, it's so close, Ross. I'm sorry, but it is.
I thought for sure he was gonna give it to Ross.
It was, like I said, it was close. I barely did that. And even that, I'm like, I can't really sit down and be like, this is what pushes it over the edge. It's just this general feeling after discussing all of it, where I'm like, we got points.
Discussing it for like 2 hours.
Yeah, we're so balanced on the points here that I'm sitting here like, I just feel that in the end, what episode 1 did worse, it did worse than what episode 2 did worse.
I think we need an episode where you justify your...
Ross is going to appeal the case.
Honestly, I feel like there are more plot points established that need to stay in episode 1 than there are in episode 2, but you're arguing the opposite.
Okay,
we need to have an episode where
I don't know if we want to put ourselves through this torture, but we could watch episode 1 and then episode 3 back to back and see how it goes. And then watch episode 2 and episode 3 back to back and see how it goes.
Again, though, the uselessness of each of these is not something I'm that concerned with, though. I'm more concerned with each of these individual movies as they pertain to one another, to themselves, and basically as standalone, so to speak.
But part of the argument is how it prepares for episode 3.
I'll grant that, but I do feel, just looking at it from a writer's standpoint, that 2 and 3 connect together better than 1 and 3.
Yep.
But again, with all of that backstory...
No, there's plenty there. I'm not arguing. There is plenty of
honestly,
uselessness in
just
number 2.
can't fathom how it would be easier to take all the stuff that you need from episode 1 and put it in the framework of episode 2. I just can't see it. We're gonna have to do,
So-
honestly, Chris, we're going to have to do a Nerf Nugget where the true story of episode 2.
Okay, I might have to. You give me some time to rewatch those, and maybe we'll do a Nerf Nugget where I break down how that will work.
I'll have to reach out to some friends that have not seen Star Wars. I have several friends who have never seen Star Wars and don't really know anything about it. And I have been saving them.
Why would you be friends? Oh, okay.
I have been saving them for this podcast in the event that we need a completely objective, untainted opinion. I may have to play this card.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I would be interested in that, actually.
That could be really interesting, yeah, actually, just to get a bunch of people and make them watch this. And go, okay, which of those was worse? But the problem there is I feel like... well, we'll see. We'll see. I'm sorry, Ross, though. I am calling it as, for now, we'll see in later episodes and after people post on Facebook and after we rewatch these. But I am calling it for now that episode 1 is the worst of the 2.
All of you smart listeners that agree with me can follow me. We're going to go make our own podcast.
In other news, we'll be looking for another host. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay, well, we hope you enjoyed this extremely long episode. It feels about as long as the entire prequel trilogy. Ross
it still has not gone as long as our 2 longest episodes.
Yeah, that's true. So next week, Ross is going to... take us on a little journey. Yes. He's going to take the lead on this episode. He's going to get to put us in our place and
after
tell us
a brief little Nerf Nugget where we get
that's true.
Where we get some mystery content from me.
That's right. Chris is going to surprise us all. But yeah, Ross is going to take the lead next week with a journey into the area of his expertise, which is video and computer games and their artwork, their design, that kind of thing. And Chris and I, we love us some good video games. Especially Star Wars ones, but Ross is sort of the undisputed master.
Most specifically, we're going to discuss LucasArts and its history.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So be sure to stay a while and listen.
LucasArts and Star Wars games, I think I should say. Just kind of, because I also want to talk about where they've been
EA
since LucasArts and where they may go.
Cool.
Yeah. Like so it should be a really. I'm excited for this episode. It's gonna be good. So be sure to stay a while and listen as Ross talks about the history of Star Wars and video gaming.
Another reference that you guys get points for.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, be sure to follow us on Twitter, @MoreCivilized. Go ahead and let Ross know that he is indeed wrong on our Facebook group at A More Civilized Podcast.
Just going to shake my head and roll my eyes. I'm just going to leave it at that. You can also... go to our website at amorecivilizedpodcast.podbean.com and you can console me in my loss on Twitter at Mr_Rstar.
You can find me on Twitter at itinerant Baxter. And please let us know if there's anywhere that you listen to podcasts and cannot find our podcast so that we can get it up on there. And let us know if there's any episodes that you would like to hear us ramble on for several hours about in the future.
Alrighty. May the force of others be with you.
Always.
I told you I was going to do it.
I'm Anna Graves, and thank you for listening to A More Civilized Podcast.